Interesting. All right, we will get started. All right, just to restart the meeting, this is Town Council Meeting 06-26. It's Tuesday, March 17th. It is 6:05 p.m. We are in the Town Council chambers at 30 Main Street in Freeport, Maine. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Moving on to a roll call. See who is here tonight. Councillor Pillsbury.
Present.
Councillor Sparta.
Here.
Councillor Lawrence.
Here.
Councillor Pilch.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
I'm here.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Benoit is here and present. We also have Amy Chow at the end of the dais, our town attorney. Our next order of business is to waive the reading and accept as printed the March 3rd, 2026 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Steve.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to our announcements. So, property tax exemption paperwork is due April 1st. Applications for the following exemptions must be submitted to the Freeport Assessor's Office by April 1st. Homestead exemption, veteran exemption, blind persons exemption, current use programs such as tree growth, farmland, open space, working waterfront, renewable energy equipment exemption, business equipment tax exemption, and benevolent and charitable institutions exemption.
Can I just clarify that if you currently get the homestead exemption, you do not need to continuously reapply, just
Right.
one time? But if you don't have it, you want to definitely get it in by April 1st.
The town council adopted a property tax assistance program for eligible seniors in our community. Applications for this program are now available. They can be printed from the town website, and paper applications are available here at Town Hall. There are several drop-in hours to meet with town staff and review the application. The drop-in hours are posted on the town website and at Town Hall. Posted roads in the town of Freeport are now in effect until May 1st, 2026, dependent upon weather. Roads are posted in late winter and early spring to protect town roads from damage from heavy loads. Permits will be issued at the discretion of the Director of Public Works based on forecasted weather conditions, road conditions, and temperatures. All permit applications must be submitted to and approved by the Director of Public Works. Applications are available at Freeport Public Works, at 7 Hunter Road, and at Public Safety, 16 Main Street. Any other announcements from the council? Great. I also have a flyer on the dais from Tedford Housing. They are having a breakfast and dedication of their new space Friday, May 22nd from 8:30 to 10 a.m. And that's at 65 Thomas Point Road in Brunswick. All right, we will move on to our information exchange. This is an opportunity for councilors to share information about town-related interactions and engagement. This includes updates from liaison activities and council committee meetings. Before I share anything from the council.
Winslow Park met, talked about gearing up for the upcoming season. There's a bunch of work to do. Town staff is all over that, so I don't think we have anything to worry about. We're going to talk about fees a little bit later, but we had a robust discussion around how we want to approach it. And Sophie was kind enough to provide us with some additional data, so everyone should have seen that, and happy to answer questions when we get to that point. Are you going to talk about appointments?
Take it away. I wasn't going to.
You'll
so great.
see the work of the appointments committee in under the first item under new business. We've continued to have a lot of great success with new applicants and reappointments, so I think the Civics 101 is really paying off. And it's been a pleasure meeting with everybody, and I think we're staffing our boards and committees with some really good folks.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's definitely a pleasure to have those meetings. You get to have really cool conversations with folks who are volunteering for the town. Anything else? I did want to share that I met with a senior resident who was concerned about property taxes. So she shared with me how she had an example where she had to pull money from one of her accounts to do a home repair after a winter storm, and it put her over the income threshold for the property tax program. And that to me seems like something we can probably fix and address. I'm curious to hear if other counselors have thoughts, or if we can maybe bring that to the Finance Committee.
Could you explain a little more about what the situation was? In other words, I
Yeah,
don't
so
quite understand.
with the property tax, the senior property tax program, we do have income limits. So if you're over a certain income threshold, you don't qualify for the program. The resident I spoke with otherwise would have qualified if she did not have to pull money from an account that counted as income. So it put her over the threshold. So if there was no emergency, she didn't have to use that funding, she would have been able to qualify for the program. So it seems like it doesn't quite get to the spirit of what we're trying to do.
Is there also an asset check? So if she has $10 million in this account,
Yep.
she wouldn't qualify?
Correct, yes, yep. So there's a check there as well. So, and I'm assuming, I would assume she's not the only person who has had this experience. Yeah.
Is that going to the Finance Committee for review, or is that going through ordinance?
This is my first time bringing it to the council, so I'm curious thoughts on, either we can decide tonight, direct Sophie to tell her this is something we want to do, or it can go through a committee.
Well, wouldn't it has to go through both if we start with finance, but it would only have to go to ordinance if that's where we started. And in full disclosure, it's going to work for me both ways, so I'm happy to make it what's most expedient. I mean, I think you nailed it. Like, the spirit of what we tried to put into effect is what's important, and I think we can make adjustments as needed. So
Yeah, and this is year 2, and I think we've always kind of understood that it would be a dynamic process.
So we can't go through a process of amending the ordinance. So this would be more me making sure I'm on the same page with council in how I am administering the ordinance or calculating. Like, is it that if you have invoices for medical bills and whatevers, that would kind of get taken off? At this point, the application period, we're right in it, and so there really isn't enough time to go through a regular ordinance process. So if we're talking about expedience, next week we have finance and ordinance, and I'm building agendas for both of them right now.
So it's more rulemaking, it sounds like, in terms of how you're interpreting the ordinance, and you're looking for advice from one of those committees or the entire council?
I'm looking for the advice that the council would like, as however the council wants to give it to me. That if sitting here tonight, you think that's a great idea, great, we've done that before. If you want it to go to committee for greater discussion, if you want to try to get it through a true ordinance amendment, we would have to really fast track that, because you're looking at your first meeting in May to approve the list.
Can I propose that, since we're not changing the ordinance and finance is meeting first anyway, we just take it up at finance Monday night, see what happens. We can mention it at ordinance, which is later in the week anyway.
Perfect, that sounds great.
Yeah, and it's probably time to review that ordinance anyway, because it was brand new last year and
Yep,
we went through it, so.
great, thank you. Let's see, what else? Oh, we had one of our scheduled workshops last Thursday. We had the Greater Portland Council of Governments with Christina Egan, Greater Portland Metro with Mike Tremblay, Police Advisory Committee, Mark was not available, and the name of the person is escaping me, but somebody else was, what was that?
Polly.
Pauline was there, yep. And then the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board. It was dynamic, it was great, I think it was a good time. And we had 4 counselors there. I do just want to remind folks that if you aren't able to make it, just please let Counselor Smith, myself, or Sophie know. Anybody else want to share anything from that workshop? Okay, great.
In the interest of time now.
All right. And also, I know Complete Streets met as well. Counselor Smith, you want to speak about that?
Yes, and anything Councilor Brown wants to mention about that as well. I would just say that one of the major components, in addition to our Complete Streets continued work on the Village Corridor Initiative and our anticipation of the public workshop coming up, we did meet with Bicycle Coalition of Maine to start to review a proposed scope of work where they will be partnering with the town to help with all sorts of bicycle initiatives. And we looked at a number of possibilities. And one of the things that was brought up were the various types of education programs that we might benefit from with the help of BCM. And we discussed quite a bit the different constituencies, both in terms of educating cyclists and drivers who are residents, as well as cyclists and drivers who are visitors, and the very different approaches that we might take with that to keep everyone safe on our streets. So that will, those conversations will continue over the next several months. But Tom did record some video with Andrew Zaro from Bicycle Coalition of Maine that I think we're going to start to use sooner than later. Do you have anything you want to add, Steve?
Sounds great.
Perfect. All right, anything else for information sharing? One thought on the property tax assistance program. Is there anything, pending conversation, of course, is there anything that would stop us from implementing changes for this year? Or
I think as long as we were consistent in the way that we did it, which just, we can reach back out. We've got 20 applicants so far, so that's not a pool of applicants that's unmanageable if we want to collect other information.
Great. All right. Thank you. Welcome. All right, and we don't have any committees scheduled for our information exchange this evening. So we will move on to our town manager's report, which is attached to the materials. I do want to call out the piece about the RSU 5 budget process. So we will have the superintendent as a guest in April.
Yes, we will. Tom Gray is going to come visit us. I did attach the current workbook, budget handbook that he publishes and then updates after each of the meetings that he has with the school board. I did not link it here because I wanted a static document. But if folks want to keep up with him, all you have to do is go on the RSU page. It's right there. I'm excited to have him come join you. It's about the budget, but he's here to just introduce himself and to answer any questions or have conversation that you might like.
Do you know the timing on that? Will the school board have finished with their sort of deliberations on the budget at that point? So I only mention that if people are watching, if they have comments on the budget. I think the next meeting's tomorrow. So instead of waiting and trying to address them in a more informal setting here, the ship will have sailed.
Yes.
So-
Yes. So the only other thing, there are 2 others I just want to briefly call out. One is that Maine Department of Transportation currently has an on-demand formal public meeting. There's a link in my report, but that meeting is to the proposed construction of a 1,900-foot shared use path from the 295 bridge east to Main Street on Route 1, so along Mallet Drive. That's something that if council or community members are interested, they should really offer their feedback, because this is a time when it will go back to design if there's feedback that drives it there. And then lastly, Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board is excited to be hosting a sustainability workshop with Eco Maine at FCS, 53 Depot Street, Monday, April 6th at 6:30, so before our next council meeting. So I just wanted to put that on everybody's calendar.
Great. Pulling up the RSU5 budget timeline, just kind of go back to what you were saying, Matt. Tomorrow is one of their scheduled times for public input on the budget. There's also scheduled time on their March 25th meeting as well. So good to get out there for folks if they want to speak to the board.
I just wanted to call out in the manager's report also the kickoff for the public safety building space and engineering study. I know that had gotten delayed by weather by a few weeks, so I'm glad that that is now in motion, and the Municipal Facilities Committee looks forward to seeing the first feedback on that, because I think, as we have discussed, there is quite a lot of need for space at the public safety building, and we know it's going to be years until we can address it. So as soon as we can get started on that, the better.
Great. Any other comments on the manager's report?
A
Councilor
quick
Passeri.
question. You had mentioned Public Works, and or maybe it was in the finance update around just where we are year to date in the budget. How are we doing Public Works wise with all the winter weather? Is that a concern? I know there are shortages of materials. Hopefully we're out of the danger period, but just curious how we ended up.
So we're doing fine with the budget. We are more spent than we normally would be at this time. As we continue moving on, what that just means is we might have to pare down some of what we do in the spring that we've been able to kind of do faster than normal. Given the fact that Public Works is going to be headed out to Winslow Park to clean up and take care of brush and stuff like that, we'll have plenty to occupy the team as we head out of the winter and into the summer months. So I think we're in good shape. Earl does have a knack for being able to move projects around and make sure he hits his budget expectations. What you saw in there, though, is that we had a considerable amount of overtime and time. Yeah, it's expensive.
Hopefully you didn't just jinx us, Matt. Yeah. How much, though, is the question. Any other comments on the manager's report? Is there anything you'd like to add since you published it?
Well, since I published it at 12:18 this morning, I think we're doing.
It's pretty up to date. All right. All right. So then we'll move on to our first public comment period for folks who are here in person. So this is limited to comments on items that are not on the agenda. We ask that if you speak to just introduce yourself and try and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. So if folks are interested in speaking, you may go up to the podium. Go ahead, yes.
Good evening, my name is Sue Ann Williams-Lindgren. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I wanted to piggyback on what Joanna was bringing up about the senior support, tax support. And that is, some of you may know this, some of you are nowhere near needing to know this yet. But once you retire, you're required at a certain age to withdraw a certain amount of money annually. And if you put it in my 401k, which was our only real option at that point in time.
Oh, thank you. Which was our only option at that point in time. When you withdraw, you have to pay taxes on it. That counts as income. Okay. So I just want you to be aware of that. I've lived here on 49 Spar Cove for 33 years. At the time that my husband and I bought our home, it was $175,000. It's now valued at over $1 million, totally out of my control. I don't like that. I don't need that. I don't want to pay the taxes on that for obvious reasons. I have a 1.33 acre plot in a small, less than 1,200 square foot home. I'm retired. I'm widowed. Not that this is a poor me thing, but I'm not the only one in the community that is facing the concerns of very high taxes. From 1993 until 2014, these are the years I have data on it. For 21 years, I paid less than $6,000 a year. Okay. In the last 12 years, the rate has increased 53%. 53%. So I'm now paying $11,000 a year. That's not sustainable, you guys. It's just not sustainable. It's not going to help bring people in the community. It's a lousy thing for seniors then to try to figure out how do we live out our lives in a place where we have very, very deep roots and we want to live out our lives. I've not had any children in the school system. I don't mind paying for good education, but to date I've paid $132,000 from the last 12 years, $132,000 in taxes. So that's like $100,000 if at a 75% rate for schools. Anyway, I'm not sure, I already know in my heart of hearts that enough is enough. I'm not sure what it's going to take to get the support we need from the town for this to be enough. I would like, a number of seniors I've talked to said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had some kind of grandfathering or grandmothering, whatever you want to call it, for people who have lived here a long time. So anyway, I just want to share that with you, put it at your feet, and thank you for listening. And I don't know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Ann.
You're welcome.
I have a question for the manager that's sort of related, and I can't remember exactly the details, but I feel like I had asked last year maybe for a history of what the tax would be on a median house as the price of the median household has changed through the years, what the tax on that
Yep,
hypothetical house would be.
Min created this gigantic spreadsheet, and I can go dig that up and send it back out to council, but there is a median house value has changed significantly, yeah. So I can get that back out to council.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
And I think too, you know, the senior property tax program is like one of the levers. There's certainly more we could think and talk about. Sue Ann and I had a great conversation about that over coffee. But yeah.
Yep. And not to pass the buck, there are limitations on what we can do because of state law, which, as I understand it, we must assess tax based on the value of a house. So if the value of the house goes up,
So I'm gonna
we have control over our budget, of course,
yeah.
but we can't assess houses at different.
So the state is the sole arbiter of what can be exempted from that requirement of taxation at fair market value. And that is where the senior property tax assistance program came in. The state allowed for this little, it has to be means tested, and it has to be, there's a limit to how much it can be, and it has to be people over the age of 65. So, yeah, I think the one issue that happens when the state creates exemptions, like there's the homestead exemption and there are veterans exemptions, every time that it creates an exemption, it creates a larger burden for everybody else.
In Min's giant spreadsheet that you're going to send out, was there also a column that took into account inflation? So as taxes go up, inflation goes up?
I think there was, but my hunch is he's probably listening. And when I come in the morning, if there wasn't, there probably will be now.
Okay, thanks.
And I will say this is a great time to sort of plug this into some of the work we're doing with downtown, and trying to get more of a tax base down here will help hopefully minimize that impact over time. Yeah. All right, anybody else for public comment? Okay. All right, so we'll move on to our new business. So item 25-26, this is our consent agenda. We have some appointments, as Councilor Pillsbury pointed out, and use of town property requests as well. Councilor Pillsbury, can you please read the be it ordered?
Sure. Be it ordered that the March 17th, 2026 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to item 26-26. So this is our public hearing to prohibit charging the public to park in the Village Commercial 1 and 2 zoning districts.
And I'm going to recuse myself for this item.
Great. So we have town planner Kyle Drexler here to refresh our memory.
So it's like we talked about a couple weeks ago when we were setting the public hearing. So this originally started with the moratorium, I think back in September. And there was direction from council to the planning board after a series of public feedback for the planning board to come up with a draft zoning text amendment that would prohibit paid parking in the Village Commercial 1 and Village Commercial 2 districts downtown. So the planning board worked on a small text amendment to section 514 of our off-street parking standards in the zoning ordinance that really just added a single provision that prohibits those sorts of paid parking, off-street parking spaces in those two districts. The planning board had their public hearing on February 4th. They voted unanimously that the ordinance amendment was consistent with the comprehensive plan. There was, I think, fairly minimal public comment at that meeting during the public hearing. I believe there was just one comment in support of the ordinance amendment at that time. Although at the planning board's prior meeting, we did have a few other comments as well. But with that, that pretty much sums it up. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Kyle? I said this last time, and I'll say it again, that I think the lack of questions is not disinterest. It's the fact that we've been talking about this for quite some time at this point. So thank you. And with that, I'll open up the public hearing. So if anyone would like to speak on this item, you may walk up to the podium. Anybody online? No hands. All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Any further discussion up here on the dais?
So where does this leave us as we vote and close this part out? What are we doing about parking in totality? And how does that conversation continue? So I still think that there's some unresolved questions, specifically around one of the issues that sort of spurred this whole discussion as to, how would maybe a nonprofit organization create budget flexibility or expense relief with an asset that they have that now doesn't have the same value as it once had. So, these are still concerns that our town is going to be faced with. I think the public input and the discussion and the process that's got us here has been great, but I still think that there are elements of this that warrant discovery and discussion. So what are our thoughts as to how we continue that? Because we all know we get busy, the agenda's full all the time, and it's hard to carve that space and time to continue to.
Yeah, two things that come to mind. This is meant to, as we talked about in the beginning, this is meant to be like for now until we see how the downtown vision and BCI plays out. So I think there's still more of that to be seen. And then also I know staff was working on doing some data collection on what would it look like if we had all record of those leases and shared use agreements. And I don't know where that stands.
So we pulled the data. It's actually gone to codes. Codes has started to enforce some of those leases, and we're seeing some people who are going to be looking for parking. So you might see that change. Now, they may go to Kyle and ask for recalculation of parking, so we're waiting to see kind of moving through that process. But I think there was at least one that was looking for somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 parking spaces, so.
And I think
More than that.
Huh?
I think more than that.
All right, well, I was just trying to be,
But, yeah.
And I think that, we're kind of in that data finding phase. I think to kind of make sure we touch on what you're saying is like, when do we bring it back up? When do we kind of revisit it?
so I think we have just begun the enforcement piece, and in Freeport, enforcement means a letter goes out from the code officer saying, I think you might be in violation. And then we have conversations, and then we try to have, oftentimes, it's getting back and forth with each other. So I think it would make sense. Kyle, do you think if we kind of tabled this for discussion in like 90 days, that we would have a better sense of where we would be, that we probably have worked through the process? To
Yeah.
at least know.
Yeah, I mean, so I know some of those, in talking with code, some of those letters have gone out. I think we're still waiting for responses. I think, yeah, there's a few things that could happen. We have a parking recalculation process right now, so people who are in need of parking that they previously weren't aware of or just weren't complying with, or whatever the reason, they could reach out to planning to do recalculations where we look at, updated building floor area calculations to see if they are accurately, the number that they have is actually reflective of what the ordinance requires. But if it is, or they still fall short of meeting their parking requirement, then they're in a position where they need to find off-street parking available in the downtown somehow. So that could change, the whole landscape of the leased pool and all of that. So yeah, I would expect in like a 90-day, couple-month time frame that we would have more info on that.
Great. And that'll line up with after budget season, hopefully. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? You'll see with the language that if we do pass this language change, we'll then vote to repeal the moratorium because we won't need it anymore. All right, well, with that, Counselor Sparta.
Be it ordained that the proposed amendments to Chapter 21, thank you, Freeport zoning ordinance regarding restrictions to paid parking in the Village Commercial District 1 and Village Commercial 2 zoning districts be approved.
Second.
And can you read the, I'm sorry, I should have directed you to do this. Can you read the?
Be it further ordered
Yes, please.
that the Town of Freeport Parking Facility Moratorium Ordinance, originally adopted on September 26, 2025, retroactive to June 24th, 2025, and extended on December 3rd, 2025, be repealed.
I'll second that one also.
All right, any further questions, thoughts? All those in favor?
Aye.
6-0. All right. Okay, we will move on to item 27-26. This is to consider action on a proposed ordinance submitted by a group of 5 residents that is entitled "The Ordinance to Launch the Island Rover Vessel" for consideration of adoption by the town council or for presentation to the town clerk to accept the request and begin the citizens' initiative proceedings. And I think we have Amy here to walk us through this process. I can't quite see you, so I was like, I think she's there.
Am I mic'd up?
You are not mic'd
I'll assume
up.
I am.
Oh, you sound loud and clear now.
Okay. A little bit of background before we get to the letter that I believe was submitted on March 9th. It's a letter from 5 residents essentially seeking to begin the citizens initiative process, which I'll explain in a moment. The letter was dated February 5th. I think it was hand-delivered to the town on March 9th. And just to provide a little bit of background to the council, this is an ordinance to launch the Island Rover vessel. And the procedural kind of background around this request is linked to a set of proceedings that have been going through the Coastal Waters Commission for the period of about 2 years, starting in the summer of 2023 and leading to a decision in September of 25, in which the Coastal Waters Commission denied the application by the Island Rover folks in Carter Becker to construct a temporary boat launching facility at Zero Shore Drive. That decision is on appeal. It's before the Superior Court on a Rule 80B appeal right now, so that is being litigated. And in addition, there is litigation, longstanding litigation, which I will not go into, but just for background, there is also pending litigation resulting from a history of consent orders and enforcement actions where title to the land on which the Island Rover currently sits and title to the vessel itself is in dispute. So as a precursor to this, I think it's important the council understand that procedurally right now, the Coastal Waters Commission has denied the application. And the purpose of this letter is to, as indicated in the letter itself, is to allow ordinance relief to accomplish a one-time launch of the Island Rover vessel. That is what the purpose of the letter has said, and I know there are folks here who have represent those folks, so I won't pretend to explain all of those things. But let me just talk procedurally about what to do with this, what the council may do and be asked to do tonight on this. So your charter has 2 ways in which, there are a number of ways, but 2 ways in which ordinances generally can be approved. And one is under section 2.13 of your charter. That's what I would call the normal customary way. That's when a proposed ordinance is introduced in writing by a councilor. It then goes through a public hearing process, comes back to the council for review and approval or denial. Then there is another process which this letter is seeking to invoke, and that's under section 8.01 of your charter. That section is called Enactment of Ordinances by Initiative, and many towns that do have a charter do allow a process by charter that, notwithstanding what any given councilor or the council might want to propose as an ordinance, there can be a group of citizens under certain circumstances who can cause an ordinance amendment to be voted upon at a future election. And so 8.01 does outline the process for that. The first paragraph of 8.01 does say that this is to sort of tee this off or get this started. It needs to go to the council, and so the council in this posture could accept this ordinance as is with no amendments. I don't believe you are allowed to amend it on the floor. You can accept it, and then it would flow through your sort of regular procedures, probably by way of an introduction under 2.13 and a public hearing process. The other thing that you can do is to decline to adopt the substance of this proposed ordinance. And if you were to do that, then that does trigger a number of procedural requirements involving the town clerk that would allow a petition to be prepared and circulators to circulate a petition to allow this ordinance to be eventually voted on at a future election. So essentially, I won't go into all the details, but there are a number of steps you have to step through, including that once the petition forms are provided by the town clerk to the petitioners, then they need to follow circulators' requirements to collect signatures from valid voters in the town of Freeport. They have 30 days to do that. Those get turned into the clerk, who then has a period of time to determine whether they are all valid and whether that meets the 10% number of 10% of the number of voters who voted in your last gubernatorial election. Then that sets off a public hearing process before the town council. It would then follow up with a public hearing before the planning board, as any ordinance amendment would go to, and then eventually it would go to an election. It would go to a municipal election. So in a nutshell, that's the process that your charter lays out for something like this. So I think the question before you broadly is, do you wish to decline or to accept the ordinance as is and allow it to go through your normal process? Or do you wish to decline to adopt it as is, but allow it to go through the citizens' petition process? There's one more piece that I think 8.01 does contemplate, and that is town attorney review of the ordinance. In general, what your ordinance says is the town attorney can review this and make corrections that are non-substantive, that do not materially change the meaning and the effect of the proposed ordinance, but to look at it with an eye towards avoiding repetition, advancing clarity, and the town attorney can look at it through the lens of, are there blatant illegalities or unconstitutionalities that this proposed ordinance presents that would cause me to recommend that you not allow this to go through the petition process. So what I will say just about that initially is I've reviewed the ordinance. I do have some substantive comments to make, and you may wish to open it up to comment, and I can comment later, or I can comment now. What I will say initially is that I have not detected illegalities or unconstitutionalities that would cause me to recommend that you not allow this to go through the 8.01, what I call it's known as the citizens petition process. Many of you have heard that term. It's the citizens initiative process to allow this proposed ordinance to be voted on by folks in town. So I have not reached a threshold where I would recommend that you not allow it to go through that process. However, I will say I am also not sort of waiving the right on behalf of the town to argue that if it does, this ordinance in some form does get adopted, that there may be illegalities or unconstitutionalities at that point that the town may wish to have me review. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions about the process that the council might have.
And I will say, following our new public comment policy, we'll open it up to council discussion first and then allow the public to speak. So any questions we have, now's the time.
We'll have another chance later to ask more questions.
Yes.
And Madam Chair, would you like me to go through some sort of high-level points first, or would you like to have the public respond and then?
I think going over some high-level points might be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you.
All right, so I'll do that now. I have three main points in my review of the ordinance on the substance of the ordinance that I wanted to alert the council to. And there are a number of provisions in here. I will not go through them line by line. There may be others who want to do that. But I want to simply point the council to one proposal to substantively amend a standard that's in your shoreline zoning ordinance, and that's in section 404 of the shoreline zoning ordinance. And by way of background, every use in the shoreline zone is subject to minimally these substantive standards by mandatory shoreline zoning guidelines, and also by your shoreline zoning ordinance. And those 4 standards are whether the use or the structure or whatever is being proposed will maintain safe and healthful conditions. That's number 1. Number 2, will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters. Number 3, will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater. And number 4, will not have an adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat. What I will say in this proposed ordinance is that there's additional language being proposed here that I believe has the effect of seeking to exempt from review a proposed temporary boat launching facility that is defined specifically by the proposed ordinance from any meaningful review of this particular standard, as long as the construction and utilization of that facility occurs during the period between October 15th and April 1st. I have concerns about that because I think there's a possibility that the Department of Environmental Protection will see that violates a substantive standard that any other use in the shoreline zone would have to be subjected to. It also could be seen as an exemption in your own shoreline zoning ordinance. And my concern would be that DEP could have a concern about that, and it has the ability to strike provisions of any proposed ordinance that it believes are not in compliance with mandatory state shoreline zoning guidelines. So at a minimum, what I would recommend with respect to that one provision, there may be others, is that if the council is inclined to have this go forward with the citizens petition process, that the town ask DEP to review this prior to any election that might be scheduled, assuming that the number of valid signatures, the number of signatures that are valid are certified. So that's point 1. Point 2 is a jurisdictional point that I wanted to make. So up to now, boat launching facilities, docks, wharves, temporary or permanent, have been reviewed jurisdictionally by the Coastal Waters Commission. What this seeks to do is to take away the jurisdiction of the Coastal Waters Commission for this particular facility and put it in the hands of the Codes Enforcement Officer. The Codes Enforcement Officer is not required to have a hearing on any such application. And so if this were to go to the Codes Enforcement Officer, there would be no opportunity for public hearing, unless the Codes Enforcement Officer decided to do that, but I don't believe your ordinance or the proposed ordinance allows for a public hearing in this case. I think in the context of the proceedings that have happened before this, there is a way to look at this as an effort to nullify the Coastal Waters Commission's denial of the permit that was before it and allow the applicant to come back with the same application under a different set of ordinances. So that is another comment I just want to bring to your attention about the jurisdictional change that is being proposed here. And finally, I'll just mention that the letter does say that the intent here is to allow a one-time launch of a single vessel over a single piece of property. In my opinion, the way this ordinance has been drafted, or the proposed ordinance amendments have been drafted, it goes far broader than that. This is allowing a temporary boat launching facility, including a temporary road, to be launched on any property in the MDR 1 district, not just Zero Shore Drive. It is temporary only in as much as temporary is generally defined as 7 months out of the year. It has not been defined to say temporary means a one-time construction and a one-time removal for the launch of a single vessel. So there are no constraints based on temporary, leading one to potentially interpret this as saying, I can put a facility in temporarily for 7 months, take it out, put it in the next year for another 7 months, take it out. There are no sort of guardrails around that. And then finally, I'll just comment that there is no proposed sunset clause in this, so that if this was intended for a single launch of a single situation, it has not been framed to do that as well. I think I'm done with my sort of high-level comments, but that's what I have to offer.
Before I open up for public comment, any initial thoughts or questions from council? All right, so if folks do want to speak on this matter, similar guidelines apply. Introduce yourself, please keep it to 3 minutes or so. So folks are welcome to speak. Go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for the time. And Amy, thank you for the overview. My name is Twain Braden, and I represent the Island Rover Foundation and Harold Arndt. I've represented Harold for about 9 years. I've come before you in some capacity many times over the years. And I just wanted to give thank you to Amy for giving a lot of the background, so I won't go into that. I think the important thing to recognize about this is that it is indeed temporary. And I think that Amy has pointed out, a lack of a sunset clause. There's no intention to build another Island Rover. This is a one-time chance to put all of this to rest. So there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is, as Amy's pointed out, this litigation has been going on for 22 years. 22 years. And I've been involved for 9. And there are 4 matters in federal court, in state court. There's an appeal pending before the Superior Court on the Coastal Waters Commission, as we've all heard. So that's the bad news. And the bad news gets worse in that there's no end in sight, because all these folks want to do is launch the boat. The good news is you have a referendum in front of you that gives you exactly that. Get this boat out of the town of Freeport. That's all this ordinance wants to do, to give it to the voters to say, we've all had enough. We do not want to litigate this anymore. That's what I hope that the voters say. That's certainly what our clients say, is we just want a chance to get this boat out of the woods and out of your lives, out of the lives of everybody in the town of Freeport. There's a huge expense associated with this, a huge expense that the town feels. Sophia, this project was launched because of your concern about the cost. We share that concern. So this is the way to make the litigation all go away. So the cost is minimal to the town. Once this boat is gone, the litigation, everybody who's been involved in this said, is if that damn boat just launched, all of this would fade away. The referendum is the least costly, the most effective way. Now, I'm under no illusions that you'll somehow see the light and, say, hey, this sounds like a great idea. Let's just do it. It's never that easy with this boat. But I can tell you that from the bottom of my heart, this boat, if this referendum passes and this boat launches, from our perspective, the litigation fades. There is no intention for the litigation to continue at all. The boat just needs to get in the water, and it's ready. So thank you for listening, and Amy, thank you for your background. And the intent truly is to get the boat out of here and have the litigation end. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Collins. I represent Joe Bohan III, Ken Murphy, and Judy Wood, and I represented a bunch of others too in front of the Coastal Waters Commission. All of my clients are close neighbors to the Island Rover proposed launch site and have grave concerns about this. And we urge the council to decline the opportunity to adopt this ordinance, and we would urge to anyone who's being asked to sign it not to do so. For a plethora of reasons that I'll go into. So like Amy, I'm also a municipal attorney representing towns, and from time to time, a project that has some advantages or is good to the town comes forward, but it doesn't fit our current zoning. and we always advise the town not to make zoning around a particular project, no matter how much you might want it. In this case, of course, these proposed changes would apply townwide to any temporary boat launch meeting this definition. So to solve one problem is going to create a bunch of other potential problems. So it would be just simply bad policy to take this up just because we want to get done with the Island Rover mess. And, you know, this case isn't even a great project because the Coastal Waters Commission has found that the applicant has not satisfied the town that it won't cause great environmental harms. So why would we overhaul our whole ordinance structure to allow a use that has already been found by a municipal board with a lot of competence to not be a good project? Other substantive problems, a lot of which Amy already pointed out. This is couched as an ordinance to allow the launching of the Island Rover. It applies, again, town-wide. 7 months doesn't mean anything because, of course, that's the primary launching season for any property that would want to do this. The ordinance change doesn't limit the launching to any particular type of project. You don't have to have an existing commercial use or anything that's sort of adjacent to the idea of launching boats. So that means that any property, residential, commercial, or otherwise, could just build a boat launch. And there would be no public process, no thorough review, at least in public. This could happen all over town at any magnitude. So we might, again, be solving one problem in the litigation that is part of one problem. But think how many appeals you get when you allow this type of project throughout town on any property, and the neighbors getting upset like they are here, appealing those projects. And I would suggest that even if this goes to the code enforcement officer and a permit is issued, that doesn't forestall the ability to appeal that permit. So it's not really solving a problem. It is creating more. It puts a tremendous burden on your code enforcement officer, both for this project, which is, of course, really controversial, and for others to evaluate all of these environmental concerns. It's a lot better when these things are done by board, where there are different perspectives brought to the table, and people can hear and see the decision-making process. It also alters the minimum standards in a way that doesn't comport with the DEP guidelines. Amy alluded to this. I think the DEP would shoot down certain portions of this ordinance. There's a severability clause in the ordinance, but I don't think that really fixes the problem. It calls for a work window that doesn't account for, you know, various habitats, various times that these species might be breeding. Just saying it's in the winter months doesn't really address that for every property and every type of habitat. And essentially, it allows for the most important, like the most impactful parts of a marina or other facilities like that, like a boatyard, which are currently prohibited in a lot of areas in town. It allows you to just go ahead and do it with only a CEO permit. So why would we prohibit marinas and boatyards but allow a boat launching facility pretty much anywhere? So there are a lot of substantive problems. You know, a town would never adopt something like this without a big, long, thorough committee review process, and shouldn't do so here or at all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak?
Hi, my name is Chalmers Hardenberg. I live at 11 Somerset, just down the street here. I want to speak for this ordinance, or at least for the effort to get this off of our table. First, I'm embarrassed that the town has opposed the launch of the Island Rover for years and years. Here in a state where boat building is a tradition and coastal waters are used to launch all sorts of boats from Kittery to Freeport. Attorney Collins has spoke of great environmental harm from the launch, but I attended many of those coastal waters hearings, and that's just not true. There was some potential environmental harm, but great. We're not talking a giant oil spill. We're not talking any oil spill. Just talk building over the seabed. Second, I'm irritated that so much of our financial resource has gone to pay attorneys to stop the launch. And I say that as a former attorney. Attorney Braden pointed out there are 4 matters in different courts. And it's been there. We've been doing this for 22 years. Now, once again, Amy is here, completely deserving of her fee. I'm not saying that she shouldn't be paid for this, but can't we put an end to that? Can't we get that boat in the water? Thank you.
Thank you, Chalmers. Would anybody else like to speak? Okay, thank you.
I'm Patty Kennedy, and I live at 30 Byram Avenue, which is right across the street from Buckham. And when the Island Rover gets moved, my property will be impacted. A lot of properties will be impacted. But I'm willing to let that happen because this is such an incredible project. Once the Island Rover is completed, it's going to be an island, it's going to be an ocean classroom. And the sister ship is in Japan. It's already active classroom. I think that's a really cool thing. And it's something we can all be proud of. The other point I want to make is once the Island Rover is moved, that right-of-way, because it's right in the middle of the right-of-way, right in the middle of the road, once that's free, then we can continue using that road again. So I'm in favor of it. So.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My name's Ken Murphy. I live on the Cove, just up from the launching site. I've attended many of these meetings, and it sounds wonderful to get this taken care of. However, what is being proposed is launching a 100-foot, 80-ton vessel into 4 feet of water on balloons. Never been done. It says the thinking is no big deal. It can be done. There's no guarantee of that. And if the capsize happens, there are no provisions as to how to get rid of a structure that size. I can imagine the money I can make opening my dock to tourists just to see this thing. But we don't want that. The other issue years ago was when Carter was asked at a town council meeting, if the launch is permitted, what are you going to do with this hull? And his answer was that they would tow it to his mooring, which is just outside a pound of tea, and leave it there for 2 years while the boat is readied for sailing. He was asked, someone said, that's a high current area. How do you know that your moorings will hold a boat that big? And Carter's response was, I know my moorings. You people have to think of, do you really want that huge ark sitting outside a pound of tea for a couple of years? That's what they're proposing. There were many environmental issues that were minimized, but the Coastal Water Commission did realize that. The other issues were the DEP had never reviewed this as should have happened. There are many issues that should come to keep you from approving anything like this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else who would like to speak? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica Whibby. I am also counsel with Mr. Braden for Harold Arndt and the Island Rover. Thank you, Amy, for your overview of the procedural issues and the procedural history. I just want to add to this conversation that if this was passed, the DEP does still have to approve it, so it's not like we're trying to circumvent the DEP. It would be then go to them for them to decide whether it's appropriate or not. And my other point was that this ordinance, although it has no sunset date, I believe that the council is able to, repeal this ordinance once the project is done. So it's not necessarily a free-for-all. Yes, so that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Heidi Bishop. We have lived on Flying Point since 1960. This has all been my playground as a kid. It's been my daughter's playground as a kid. It's sad to hear somebody say, we'll make this boat just go away and it'll just fade away. After it fades away and the damage that it occurs to a cove that you literally at high tide you could walk through and you're not going to have your head under the water. The damage is not going to fade away. The idea that the general public of Freeport can vote on an area that I grew up in and I get to live with the damage afterwards because they want to just make this problem go away. Well, problems always leave something behind. If this thing launches, there's still going to be issues with whatever happens to the environment of that cove, the embankments. You can't take and tear out all that kind of soils and expect that to grow back in, quickly to be able to maintain any kind of continued erosions and those kind of things, even though they say, oh, yes, we're going to put those in there. That's great. How do you take something that's been built up for all these years and devastate it to that point and expect to be able to bring it back to save that land later on? It's just not going to happen. I mean, not in my lifetime. I won't be seeing that. I just really think that it's the idea of wording it as the problem will fade away. Well, it won't. There will still be repercussions of it that the town's not going to live with, but myself, my daughter, and my neighborhood are all going to live with the damage that's going to be occurred. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak?
Hi, I'm Laura Vitale. I also live on Flying Point. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Happy St. Patty's Day.
So if we're just trying to make the Island Rover go away, there's blowtorches that could cut that metal up and have that boat out of town probably before summer. So if that's the argument of the folks that are saying, let's launch it, because let's get it off everybody's agendas and everything, that is probably a more environmentally friendly way to make it happen. I've been part of this process for I don't know how long, but I also have known Carter Beckler since he first started doing business in town, and I just want to say, I've said before, that I find him untrustworthy. He had a contract with Buston's Island to be disposing of trash on the mainland, and he was dumping it in the bay before he got to South Freeport. So that I happened to have been on the board of overseers when that was going on, so I just want to put that into the mix as far as how well we can trust him as a contractor or as a somebody that's supposed to be following the rules. Yeah, I mean, never mind the whole environmental impact to that very special cove. If none of you have been there, I invite you to come to the neighborhood and see what a beautiful place it is. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak? And does not look like there's anybody online. So I will go ahead and I will close public comment. This is the opportunity for, so really what's on the table for us, as Attorney Chow pointed out or outlined, is, we can approve and accept this ordinance, or we can go through the process, direct the clerk to proceed with putting it on to the next election, hopefully the next election, for the voters. So that's really the main decision points we have tonight. Councilor Pilch.
I'll dive in. Thank you all for coming out and sharing your thoughts and opinions. This has been going on for a really long time. I moved to Maine 28 years ago, mostly inspired by the possibility of offering sail training. So I think, Twain, you were maybe the third person I met when I got here. We were talking about a different sail training vessel, similar in size at the time. So I love the idea. I love the concept. If there's a way to get the boat in the water cleanly, I would fully support it. And I love the way the project was conceived. In hindsight, I wish there had been better planning at the conception of the project to better figure out what would happen at this phase of the project to get the boat in the water. So that, not to excuse the pun, but that ship has sailed. We are where we are now. So there's litigation, there's permitting issues, there's a bunch of different things that's sort of a multi-headed monster that we're dealing with. I do want to point out that part of the reason that we're in litigation is to help the town recoup some of the costs that we've had to spend to deal with some of the issues that were raised early on in the process. So abandoning the litigation has consequences as well. What's before us now, what we're voting on tonight, is just the citizens' initiative for an ordinance change. Whether or not that impacts the litigation is a separate question. The question I have about the ordinance as it's presented is that it really does circumvent the process that we have in town. So in particular, it would allow for a special path for temporary boat launching facilities to be approved, and that path omits the public hearing process that other similar projects would go through for all other projects that we have in town. So I've lobbied up here on many occasions, sometimes I've gotten in trouble for doing it, to saying we need more public involvement, not less. So I'm concerned that we would have a process where it says you have to go through a public hearing and a public process, and everybody should be notified if there's something big going on in town, except we're carving out a little exception for temporary boat launching facilities. So that's one of the problems that I have with the ordinance as it's written. So my opinion is I would love to see the boat launched. I don't think this is the right way to do it. So I don't think the council should adopt the ordinance as it's written. I'm eager to hear what the people have to say about it. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe Mr. Braden's right that it's just time to be done with it, and this is the way that they want to do it. And if that's the case, then okay, we've got some decisions to make. But I don't think this is something that the council should adopt on our own. I'd rather hear from the people.
Yeah. And I will agree that sort of when I was meeting folks and hoping to be up here, this was one of the most polarizing topics when I was talking to folks, and people who I trust and think are very smart are on both sides of the argument. And I will say, as was mentioned, passing this does not automatically mean it launches. There are still other hurdles for example, ownership and liability, who would be responsible if something did go wrong during a launch or a process of moving it. I'm not sure how the litigation would go away if this was passed. I'm not sure that process, how that would work. I don't think it would, in fact. There are other permits that were mentioned beyond just the launch and getting the boat there. And from my perspective, kind of coming in on the later side of this 20-plus year endeavor, is the more we try and change the conditions, the more complicated it gets. It just seems to be getting more and more complicated. And not to speak for my co-counselors, but from my conversations, most people do support seeing this launched if it's legal and safe and responsible. And with that said, it's our job up here to keep the interests of Freeport front of mind when making those decisions. All that to say, I think, I support getting this through the process that would get it to the voters. I think this is a perfect example of it's a larger issue and it's very polarizing and it's beyond, I think, it impacts more of the community than I think that we can understand. And I'm grateful that we have a primary coming up in June, that if we do get this on for that election, would be a great turnout, would be a real showing of what the community thinks. So that's where I am. Councilor Lawrence.
I agree with everything that's been said here, and thank you all for coming out and talk. As it's written, I think it's a little too broad for what we're supposed to do, so I support going to a referendum. I think part of the issue that we've had here is this boat took 30 years to build, and when he first started building it, there weren't all these rules that we had. So planning for that would have been kind of difficult. That said, we are where we are, and as you said, that ship has sailed. So my point is that I would support the referendum.
Yeah, I'll kick in on this. I make my living out there, and it's very important to me that things be done in an environmentally sound way. That having been said, if this boat was down east, she'd probably be sliding into the water. We suffer a little bit from being in southern Maine. And I think we suffer being 30 years after the conception of this. And I have to say, as somebody who's a longtime volunteer of Tall Ships Maine and now Sailing Ships Maine, getting kids attached to that ocean out there is incredibly important for our state. But I don't think that the responsible thing to do would be for us as a body to decide to push this forward. I think it's a town decision. So that's my feeling.
I just want to ask a hypothetical. So in this scenario, we're faced with either we can move proposed ordinance language forward, and it would go through the regular process, or we can say no, and it can go through the citizens' initiative process, and then voters get to decide. It seems to me like, where are the guardrails as to sort of the review of the proposed ordinance? What if it's just something that's, and I'm not saying it in this scenario, but what if it's something that is just horrible for the town? We have to go through the process. Are there off-ramps available to us? I just don't, it seems like we've only really got one choice, to move it this way or to move it that way. What if it's something that there's no support within town, there's no support within council, we still have to choose one of the options?
So most of the nights I take that, but Amy is here, so we're going to make her take that tonight.
Now, do you mean are there off-ramps available to the council prior to it going to an election? At what stage? So what I can say is that tonight you have a choice. I think the choice is to, as you pointed out, you can accept it as is and have it go through a normal process. Then there wouldn't be a need for a petition to be signed. Or you can decline, and then the petition process can go forward. If the petitioners are not able to gather enough valid signatures, then this particular proposal would be dead in the water, and there's a waiting period before another citizen's petition on something like this could come up again. In terms of off-ramps, I mean, my proposal is if you're leaning in the direction of voting to decline, to adopt it as is, and essentially triggering the citizens petition process, and I would also ask you to authorize town staff need to make contact with DEP, propose to share this language with DEP and get an early indication from DEP as to whether any part of this ordinance they would not allow to be enacted. That no guarantee that DEP will get back before any election is held, but they do have 45 days after something is enacted to determine whether there's compliance. If they're silent in that 45-day window, this would be after enactment, then it stays in effect. But if not, then they can strike down within that 45 period. They can say this doesn't comply. So in terms of off-ramps, I don't know if that's an off-ramp from the election so much, but certainly the voters would be informed if we have input from a state agency prior to the election as to which aspects of the ordinance, if any, they would find objectionable. Yeah. The one I have identified is the one I do think the department would be, that would be the one I think that the department would focus on. There may be others, but that would significantly impact what actually would be enacted. Because the essential piece of this is if there's no review on the impacts to wildlife habitat, et cetera, whether it's by the codes enforcement officer or any other body, then I suppose the prospect of things fading away is higher, if you believe in that. But if that is struck down, then as has been pointed out, whether the codes officer has to determine whether that standard has been met or not, that decision is going to be made, and then there's going to be an appeal. And through all of that, there will be no public process. So I'm not sure if I answered your question about off-ramps.
Yeah, I mean, elections are expensive. Special elections are very expensive. It's timely. There's a real cost to these things. I'm just wondering how this is the first time in the 5 years I've sat here that we've had anything like this. So I'm just wondering, what if there's 5 more of these that come? It takes up capacity of staff. It takes up other resources. It pushes things off our agenda. I'm just wondering, how we mitigate some of those impacts.
Yeah.
While being true and honest to the process of engaging the folks in our town to come to us with ordinance change or citizens petitions. I mean, that's a real thing that's valuable, but it's a very complex thing, and I'm just left questioning hypothetically, how we best position ourselves to handle these things.
Yeah. And I think for guardrails too, I mean, in this particular case, what on top of the advice that Attorney Chow is giving us here is also, I mean, as was mentioned in public comment and reaffirmed up here, is it's not a silver bullet. This doesn't necessarily mean this happens and it launches. There's still countless other pieces of the puzzle that have to be figured out. So I think that sort of checks and balances plays a part of that guardrail as well. And, as was mentioned by one of the attorneys, council eventually, I'm not sure the timeline, Councilor Chow, or Attorney Chow, maybe you can advise, of when we could repeal. If we're like, this is going badly, there are suddenly countless temporary boat launches being put up. Eventually, we'll have the ability to repeal that.
I do believe so, yes.
Yeah.
I just have a question, Amy, related to the other ordinance process that you have referred to as the normal process. If we were to say, let's send this through the normal process, which requires us to have a public hearing, you've mentioned that we are not able to change anything substantive. So if we have the public hearing and we get lots of feedback on both sides, are we then obligated to pass it anyway? Do we have the ability to say we've heard from the public and we are now voting whichever way we're voting? Because it seems like, I'm not sure what the point of having a public hearing is if that doesn't impact how we could vote.
Right. So that's interesting, because I think on your own you can propose any ordinance, whether to launch the Island Rover or 20 of them in any particular district, if that's what you wanted to do. And it would go through a certain vetting process and the normal public hearing process. If you were to do that and you would construct your own ordinance, I would guess that the petitioners would say, no, that's not what we wanted. What we wanted is this ordinance, the substance of this ordinance, and we do have a right under the charter to have that voted on at an election if we get a sufficient number of valid signatures that are certified. So if you could do that, I think that would be a little confusing to do that at the same time. I think what you could not do is if they, if you said, well, we don't like your ordinance, but we like the topic of the ordinance and we're going to do something a little different, I think they would still have the right. That would be akin to saying, we are declining to adopt your ordinance. That's why I'm saying, if you want the normal process, I would say you've got to adhere to the letter of this proposed ordinance. And all that would do is obviate the need for the petition process and the signature process.
So I think what you're saying is, despite I take your point about the amendments, but if we were to say, let's send it through the process here, we have a public hearing, then it comes back up here and we vote on it, and we vote no, let's say, then it kicks it back into that citizen initiative process. And why we want to avoid that or delaying that is, if it's going to go to a referendum, it would seem in the best interest of the town for it to go to the next general, or in this case, the primary election. And that's why sort of expediting it to that is better than going through a process here that could eventually kick it to that anyway.
Right.
Okay.
So I'd like to explore what happens. We bring this to the people of Freeport. They vote to launch the Island Rover. I might understand that this doesn't mean that the Island Rover will be launched.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, so even though it's kind of, you have to think about it, right? Because even though it's called an ordinance to launch the Island Rover, it doesn't automatically
So what are the hurdles?
greenlight it. So there would be, anybody can chime in on this. The DEP and environmental, there's the overland that would be coming to council for getting it there on roads.
There's the Army Corps of Engineers.
There's still hurdles it has to go through.
Litigation.
There's other code enforcement officer permitting. There are significant other hurdles of launching.
Yeah, so to put it, again, quite simply, this is no silver bullet by any means.
But this is the highest hurdle.
Yes.
Sorry. Go ahead.
And so imagining that somehow the launch moves forward, who is guaranteeing that if something goes wrong, whose responsibility is that?
It would be the launchers, I think. Anyone who wants to take that on. You wouldn't let them go without having a performance bond.
Performance bond. Okay.
Whoever
Even
is,
if we own the boat and that happened, we would
whoever
have.
is the legal owner of the vessel would be required to have a performance bond.
And,
That's what
and that's in dispute right now.
I'm looking at you, Attorney
You're
Chow.
looking at me.
But isn't it
Here's
also?
what I will say about a performance bond. In the Coastal Waters Commission's review of this application, there was discussion about a performance bond. And that, I believe, is allowed through your ordinances. I think that the applicant could say, if this were passed and the avenue is for the reviewing authority to be the codes enforcement officer, there is no analogous provision in the ordinance that allows the codes enforcement officer to impose a performance bond, arguably. Whether or not the applicant would to accede to that, I don't know. But a litigable issue was whether or not the commission had the authority to impose a performance bond. I opined that it did. So the fact that I had to put that in writing, I think suggests that if this is a controversial issue, that issue can be litigated or that issue can be argued. I believe there was support in the commission's authority through the way your ordinance scheme works to give it the authority to impose a performance bond. Under this proposed ordinance, that is not plain on the face of the amendment.
Yeah. And I will just say, like, a performance guarantee is not like a lack of trust, it's best practice.
Absolutely best practice, yes.
Councilor Sparta?
I would wonder, the state, however, does have the ability to require that, right?
Does the state have the ability?
As the DEP reviews any process, they can require a performance bond to ensure good behavior on the part of the people.
I have
they're working
seen
with.
performance bonds required by other agencies. That is true.
Go ahead. I just want to go back to something that Amy had said earlier. To avoid ambiguity, she said, we have the option of asking town staff to proactively ask DEP for an opinion, should this wind up going to referendum. So I just want to kind of walk through that door and ask for consensus that we should do that, so that we would have that information and everyone would have that information if DEP does take the opportunity to weigh in and give any opinion.
Absolutely.
Great,
And I think
thank you.
I see nods in agreement.
Yes. I just want to say I support, given our options, I support sending this to referendum. I appreciate everyone who came out to voice your opinions. As the chair said, this has definitely been a polarizing issue for a long time. It's certainly something I've heard a lot about in District 2 from neighbors who are interested in having this boat launch after all this time, and also folks that are very interested in exactly how that's going to happen. And just to reiterate some of the comments about the history of shipbuilding in Freeport in particular, I think several things are true. Most ships that have been built in Freeport have been built in a place where it is very immediately convenient to launch them. And also the fact that most of the larger vessels that have ever been built in Freeport probably could no longer be built where they were built, because that would not meet current environmental standards. I have a lot of concerns that have already been mentioned about the ordinance. I also am concerned for the voters, particularly those who are in favor of launching the Island Rover, and the disappointment that they will face if they vote for this, only to find out that this does not, in fact, launch the Island Rover. That this is a step in many other steps that have still no clear pathway to be resolved. So I think it is true that everyone would like this to no longer be an issue that the town of Freeport is dealing with. And if there was a magic wand to wave to make it go away, someone would have found it by now, and this is not it. So I think there are clearly well-intentioned people all the way around that would like to find a solution. And unfortunately, I don't think this is it, but I think given the options, sending it to the voters is the best way forward for us at this time.
Any other comments? All right, so we do have two options here. Sounds like perhaps we are going with our second option, which is to decline to adopt the proposed ordinance and direct the town clerk to provide the appropriate petition forms. Do I have any?
Madam Chair, may I suggest a friendly amendment?
Yes.
If that is the language, I think you should add and direct the town staff to forward the proposed ordinance to the Department of Environmental Protection for immediate review.
Can you say forward the draft?
The proposed ordinance to the DEP for immediate review and comment. If that is what the council thinks.
DEP for immediate review and comment.
Is it possible to ask a question at this point or not?
We are done with public comment, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, you can ask a question.
Well, so if the staff is directed to have the DEP, can the DEP's decision for or against affect whether or not it actually goes to the elected?
No. It will essentially provide guidance on how, if they support or agree or disagree with the language.
But it wouldn't necessarily keep it from going to the ballot?
Correct. Yeah.
My understanding is they can opine on a piece of it and say, here's the entire ordinance, section 5 is not enforceable.
Yep. Okay. Councillor Smith.
Be it ordered that the town council decline to adopt the proposed ordinance entitled Ordinance to Launch the Island Rover Vessel and direct the town clerk to provide appropriate petition forms, including copies of said proposed ordinance, to be circulated by petitioners to qualified voters for signatures in accordance with Section 8.01 of the town charter and state law. Be it further ordered that we direct the town staff to forward the proposed ordinance to the Department of Environmental Protection for immediate review and comment.
Second.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Aye, and that's 7-0. Thank you all for the discussion and comments. And thank you to my co-counselors for really diving in. And Amy Chow, thank you very much as always.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Yes, that's right. There's still time for a Guinness. All right, moving on to item 28-26. This is to consider our 2026 Town Council goals. They have been circulated, I think, a couple of meetings ago. I don't think we received any feedback, so you did a great job, Councillor Smith, on synthesizing those. I will say, sort of the next step here, if we're following what we did last year, is we adopt them and they go to staff for implementation, which would then come back to us for review and discussion. Does that sound right to you, Sophie?
Perfect.
All right. Any questions or comments on our goals? I went out of order. I'm just going to go to Councillor Brown.
Be it ordered that the 2026 Town Council goals be adopted.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 7-0. Holding my breath on that one. All right, moving on to item 29-26. This is to consider action relative to renovating the Winslow Park bathhouse. Sophie, take it away.
So I'm going to try to pinch hit here tonight for Caroline. We also have Barry Sachs here, who is the chair of the Winslow Park Commission. We started several months ago, I want to say in December, even before that, with an RFP to try to renovate the second bathhouse. This involves essentially gutting it, putting in new showers that are code compliant, dealing with water fixtures, shower heads, timers, toilets that would actually, work. I think we went through a whole RFP process. We did not get any takers on that. However, we had 2 budget estimates that had been given earlier in the process, range from $124,000 to $167,000. So when we started to negotiate a scope of work with Bobby Miles, this is coming in on the lower end of what we had seen. Nick Adams, our code officer, has actually been working on the scope to understand. We worked also with Jill Johanning from Alpha One to make sure that what we get is accessible and code compliant. The commission reviewed the scope that initially went out and has been very excited at the thought that we could actually get this work done. You will notice that this says that the funds will be drawn from the Winslow Park fund balance. If you recall, when we did the budget last year, we were unsure of what capital projects would actually be able to come to fruition. We had budgeted $50,000 in capital with the idea that we could come back to you with a full project for you to review and consider to take out of that fund balance. So that's what I have. I'm happy to try to take some questions.
And the total of this project is the 128,970.
Yeah, to make it easy for Jessica, we just said not to exceed 130,000, just in case we run into something.
So a bit more than that 50.
Yes. Thank you.
Can I just double check that the invoice, the proposal was laid out in an odd way to see and total the amounts? Can I just verify that someone rolled the total up and it is the 128,970?
Yeah, we made Nick do that. He actually went through some of the way this was done. There are allowances. We wanted to make sure that the allowances were included in the total. They are. We also wanted to make sure that what he was putting aside for allowances met the codes that we needed them to meet, which are a little bit different because this is a public bathroom in the campground setting. So yeah, we made Nick do that, and so I trust it.
Question for you. Gas work's not included in the price. Is the removal and disposal of old building debris included in the price?
Yes, we did check on that.
Anything to add from the commission conversation?
I'm sorry?
Was there anything you'd like to add from the commission conversation?
No, this is interesting. The only question I have is what's the projected start and finish date?
Great. So the question was projected start and finish date. Just, I know Tom will want me to make sure that gets into the mic.
So we are under the talking with the contractor. We would expect him to start fairly soon, and it should go about 2 months. Knowing the way work can happen, our goal is to try to have this done by mid-June, just because we know people can have intentions. So
People will want them.
as we have contacted seasonal campers, we've let them know that one of the buildings might be under construction for a couple of weeks.
Great.
I'm sorry, not mid-June, mid-May, sorry. No,
Even?
mid-June, mid-June.
Mid-June. Yep. Great. So hopefully most of the season will be not impacted.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, Counselor Pilch.
To be it ordered that Bob Miles and Son Incorporated be awarded the bid for Winslow Park bathhouse renovations at a total cost not to exceed $130,000 with funds drawn from the Winslow Park Fund.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. 7-0. All right, moving on to item 30-26. So this is for us to consider endorsing the Community Vision Implementation Work Plan 2.0 that Brett Richardson did present, I think, a month ago, just about 3 meetings ago. And feel free to refresh our memories.
Thanks very much. Brett Richardson, Development Director for the town. The idea here is that the community's done a tremendous amount of work over the last several years to identify goals and a vision for the future, and that we have limited resources, and that we want to collaborate to identify the top priorities that will have the biggest impact. We want to coordinate activities across boards and committees, so we're working together, making good use of resources, as well as our partner organizations and residents and stakeholders. So this updated Community Vision Work Plan is really a consensus document. It's developed with a lot of input from staff. It was presented to the Planning Board, to Complete Streets, to the Freeport Economic Development Corporation, the Chamber, and everybody had a chance to weigh in, and hopefully their priorities are clarified here. And so a couple of quick changes from the last time we talked about this. One, a little bit of a tweak to the trail approach. The previous version included an application to the state for a trail grant for a connection to the Y. And we've got some different opinions about that, and also noted the council goal was to create a strategic vision for plans this year. So we figured it was appropriate at this time, until that vision is created, to sort of zoom out a little bit on that goal. But at the same time, add a second trail-related goal, which is to create a template memorandum of understanding that we can go out and qualify landowner interest in supporting a trail across their land. There's been an off-road trail north to south from Yarmouth to the downtown that's been a goal and a vision with a lot of work that's been done over the last several years. And so we want to honor that by creating this tool that will allow us to go out and truly qualify landowner interest, which allows us to get a better handle on where that trail route would go. And so we can make progress on that, stitching that together while at the same time creating this big vision over the next year. So that's the tweak to the trail goal. And then we also added a couple extra items in the public policy realm around gathering input from businesses in each of the designated growth areas. So downtown, the C3, which is sort of where Wilbur's Chocolates is at, and then further south, just to make sure that we're identifying points of consensus, and if there's a desire among the business community to move certain policies forward, we can start to formulate that. So we'll work with Tawny from FEDC and the Chamber to convene those meetings and have those discussions. And Sam Capalla, the chair of the planning board, is interested in participating and to frame up those discussions too. So those are the big changes there. Other than that, it's a consensus document. It's 2.0. We've made some good progress over the last year or so on some of the big goals. This acknowledges the progress we made, and then this is the next bucket of things that we want to focus on. Take any questions?
I noticed under infrastructure that the school/Elm Main trial is crossed out.
Yeah, good point. We want to table that for now. We're going to talk about that a little bit later tonight, but we have an update on the status of that. And this is just to sort of make sure that we're being consistent across these discussions. Doesn't mean that we couldn't do it. It's more just that's where we're at for right now.
Any other questions for, go ahead, Councilor.
Would it make sense to have that conversation earlier, just since it's included in the plan that we're about to endorse?
Yeah.
So
Or unless there's a reason to have it later?
can we just roll it into this, and
Yep.
then Brett gets to go home early?
I like that. That's good.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
So-
that's a great call. Thank you.
Yeah, so this was originally the school trial project was originally another other business item, but I wanted to report out on what we've learned since our last discussion a couple of weeks ago. And that is not much has changed, really. We have greater confidence in the ability for that always stop to meet warrants So we have less ambiguity around how that would be received by DOT. However, there is still ambiguity. We would still have to make the case, and we would still have to win that argument. So that is an open question. In the meantime, there is a lot going on, and there's a lot of staff demands, particularly in Public Works with Winslow Park and some new items that have fallen into their lap, which means that if we were to carry out this trial, we'd have to go out to bid. We would need to land a contractor. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't happen or that it couldn't happen, but it would be a complicating factor in terms of timing and responsiveness. Another important point, we applied for an AARP grant to have funding for the trial equipment that we would use to install. That'd be roughly a $10,000 expense to the town. The last time we did a trial at Main and Bow, DOT provided that equipment. And so we're going to hear on that grant in May, which would be an important data point that would lower the cost if we wanted to move forward on it. And then also we have a community workshop coming up with a community survey that's going to open up pretty soon, and we'll have a real show and tell for the community on April 9th at 6 p.m. at the high school. A lot of work has gone into the Village Corridor. It's based on a lot of prior community input. It's really a technical exercise for the community's vision to be funneled through the work of a professional engineering team to come up with what's feasible. We're about to share those designs with the community in a few weeks. And so the idea here is that we're going to gain a lot of information in a relatively short period of time that doesn't have a huge impact on the outcome of the trial, and that we've also learned a lot from the Main and Bow trial last fall in terms of whether an all-way stop would work. So we can push forward, but the staff inclination at this point is to pause, learn over the next couple months about funding, about the community's support, and where we want to go, and then regroup and make a determination if we want to do that, or if we want to move forward, as we discussed in the last time, with more of a focus on fundraising with DOT as a partner and moving forward towards more implementation. So that's the idea, is to pause for now.
And I will say, it doesn't mean we can never do a trial. I think we could in the fall if for some reason we decide to. It doesn't take it off the table completely. And I know there was a little whiplash of can we, shouldn't we? But I think we've gotten some clarity on that. But it kind of gave us enough time to pause and really think about order of operations from my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, talking it through with staff, just to put it simply, there is not a lot of confidence to, how do I say this? There's not a clear value to pushing this forward at this point in time. There might be in a couple of months, but I wouldn't want to stand up in front of here today and represent the team and the staff that helps put these presentations and these recommendations together. And there isn't a clear consensus to push forward on this particular trial at this moment. It doesn't mean that there wouldn't be soon, but we're going to get a lot more data here shortly that will help clarify our options.
Councilor Lawrence.
And I think that's great. And I just want to point out that part of the issue with doing these trials is we want to do it at the height of the season versus December to get the most information. But I do agree with what you have proposed here.
So I don't want to overburden staff. It doesn't make any sense to do. And I don't think it makes sense to go out, put it to bid just so that we can say we did what we said we were going to do. I do think that there is value to the community in seeing this happen. So even if it means we delay it and we don't do it in the spring, but we do it after Winslow Park calms down, or even in the busy shopping season, and I'm sure we'll hear feedback about why didn't you do it in the height of summer. But doing it rather than not doing it is still my preference. So I'm flexible on the timing of it. And if this is a March to December plan, then I could see not having it as part of this plan. But I think the consensus is still to do the trial. Would you agree with that, or do you think the point of the trial is no longer needed?
I think the technical folks who are paying attention to this gained a lot of comfort from Main and Bow. So the answer to your question, I think, is really based on where the community is. and if the community needs to see this function. I think from an engineering standpoint, there's a perspective that this would be, you could always learn more, right? You could always learn more, but it would be somewhat redundant. It would be somewhat expensive, and there's an opportunity to push forward with DOT on a capital plan that allows us to queue up for funding opportunities sooner. And so there's an opportunity for example, one of the options we discussed last time was partnering with Maine DOT to build this out with their active transportation partnership initiative, where they would fund half of it, And so the question is, I think it really comes back to our sense of if the community is comfortable with the direction we're going. And again, we're about to have a really good feedback loop with a survey and with the April 9th open house, that I think the cost of waiting a couple more months is low relative to what the upside could be.
Could we ask the community on the 9th or in the survey, or just generally to see if they have a strong preference for saying, I'd love to see this trial, or just I'm comfortable with it being part of the plan later on, I don't need to see it trialed. I'd love to get a sense for what they want.
Okay.
This also does remind me that we talked about, I think you're spot on, that we said we were going to do it, and if we're not, which I agree with, I think it's a way to kind of conserve resources and move forward. But if we're not doing the trial after we pushed it out there, making sure we communicate that, working with Peter on some sort of communication plan.
Yeah, we discussed that earlier this week, just to make sure that we were prepared to move that forward.
Yeah.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear, too. I think we're, from a staff perspective and a project management team, we're trying to be as efficient with resources as we can, and also transparent. These are important decisions. They're also fairly complex decisions. And so we have to be open to new information, and we want to be transparent about how we evolve as we learn more.
Councillor Brown.
And we are going to continue the Mallet Drive work. So the light, I mean.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So we'll learn stuff from that also.
Councillor Pillsbury.
I echo Dan's point. I mean, the reason I was supportive of doing the pilot, like I understand that it takes resource and time, but if we're moving forward because we have the ability to unlock some funding to support the permanent construction of what that intersection might look like, without doing a trial to see what unintended consequences are put in place, then we're faced with either it goes well and great, or we have to put money and resources into fixing something that we permanently put in place. And if we look at the trial that we did previously, if we had just gone forward and locked that in with curbing and structural changes, we would have had a significant expense to fix it. So I think that I'm still in favor of seeing what the trial looks like, but at the same time, if the public overwhelmingly were to give us feedback and say, no, we're good, then I think we could reconsider it. I'd also be concerned that wouldn't be a representative sample at that meeting, so I'm still in favor of seeing if we can't fit in the trial.
And I think that makes sense when we're thinking about, like, if we're removing lanes. And I think about sort of like the stop, that can happen. That's low hanging fruit. That can go in and out no matter what it looks like. But I can understand what you mean with the removing of lanes. Councillor Sparta.
Well, I think one of the things we just heard is that this is a very complex thing.
Yeah.
Right? And I am one of the people that thinks that we did not collect all of the information that we needed when we did our last go-round with the trial. So I would really like to see a trial happen here so we can collect the data from the other surrounding streets and neighborhoods before just implementing. So, if that means we delay by a year, that means we delay by a year. It might not be the, what's that?
Don't say that.
Let's go back to the Island Rover 22 years, right? I mean, we don't have to rush forward.
So in terms of, I think we'll get a lot of input April 9th. I think we can, if it makes sense, to get more information specifically about what folks want to see with a trial. And then in that case, we leave the school Elm and Main piece in the work plan for now.
Can't amend it later. I mean,
I'm hearing a lot of support for wanting to keep
Yeah,
that as a priority.
yeah, I get that. I'm usually one that is also, I like to see it before it goes, but we did a lot of work with Bo and Maine. You're telling us the experts are comfortable with what they discovered with Bo and Maine, although you say we had enough information. Sometimes doing more is not the right thing to do.
The only thing I would add to that, it's a great discussion, and, the phrase I used in front of the planning board, talking about this plan, is I'm the scribe, so wherever you guys want to land, I'm taking input, and we're amending this, obviously, and we can do that more. But I think it's important to note, too, that the Maine and Bow trial was really done relatively quickly, and it was not laid out to mimic what it would ultimately look like. It was laid out to be cost-effective and to simply measure whether an always stop would work. And I think some of the feedback that we got from that trial was actually further confusion because of the way it appeared, and concerns about, public space if we reclaimed it for pedestrian use. If it was with temporary activity, temporary materials, is it truly going to, clearly show how it would be used in the future? So I only say that to sort of hopefully clarify a little bit that trials can add a lot of information, but it's not always guaranteed to be highly calibrated to what it's actually going to look like in the future. So I just wanted to share that gray area that can also come out of a trial as well.
The way I feel is we can trial a four-way stop truly anytime. Well, not truly anytime, but that's a bit more of a light lift. It's really if we're going to take out the lanes, turning lanes, that I think is the key piece of that works or not.
How it was phrased to me from the DOT, from Matt Drost, was that the reconfiguration of the lane, removal of the lanes, squaring up the crosswalks, narrowing the crosswalks, would create a lot of safety benefits, whether or not there was an always stop there or not. So there's some value there. Adding this always stop would also add a tremendous amount of safety on top of that. But there's incremental steps, from nothing to the whole thing.
Speaking of incremental steps, can't we just do a very, very lightweight trial with traffic cones, as if we were doing some construction and saying, hey, this lane's closed for a day, and we start on a Tuesday morning, and if it works well, we do it on a Saturday, something like that, rather than cementing things down onto the pavement?
I will be honest, some of the input from Matt at DOT was that even approval of the trial was not a slam dunk, that there would be concerns about safety. And if we go back to how the Maine and Bow original trial design diverged to what it ultimately became, if you want to have pedestrians in these spaces where DOT landed before, was it had to be barricaded, right? So if you're going to have a spot where folks can sort of be out there, and in this case, we're talking at School and Elm about narrowing that fairly significantly, then there may be requests for beefier, harder to move, more expensive installation to make that happen.
Because people would be waiting in the crosswalk to cross.
Yeah, that's the idea. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I support what Matt was saying. I just think we don't know what we don't know. So I get that we learned a lot from Maine and Bow, and we know a whole lot more, but I also think that there may be unintended consequences, like what happens if it does back all the way up to Mallet, or something else that we just haven't even thought of, or the traffic on the side streets, which I know is a concern that some of the people in the community had. All this traffic is going to suddenly be going on a side street. So anyway, I'd love to see a trial.
When do we hear about the grant?
May.
So is it fair to try and get some input from the public April 9th with maybe with the survey also? I'm sure you have questions already determined for that, and also see if we get this grant. and then revisit the conversation with the intention of trying to do a trial?
I mean, I think that's an option. I'm happy
Yeah.
to do that.
I guess, yeah, I'm asking you all as well. Yeah.
And what you're saying, though, Brett, is that we would also still need to get DOT approval for the trial. So as you're saying, we could have that as our intention and not get approval. Does it make sense to officially ask that question, or do we wait even until we have these other milestones of public input, grant decision, and then ask?
So we have the design from Stantec, right? I mean, it's an engineered plan, and we have the cover memo. We're pretty well poised to seek that approval. From a collaborative relationship standpoint, my instinct would be that we would want to know whether we were going to truly do it before we submitted that. So if there's a desire to move forward, it's really a budget question, I think. But I will say that from what I've heard is that the strong staff consensus is to wait until we know more in April, and until the workload sort of clears up. Because otherwise, we're going out into bid with a relatively small project to an industry that's got workforce challenges as they head into their busiest season. So the bid and the third-party installation, it's a requirement, first of all, from a capacity that we have. And second of all, it's a complicating factor that's hard to truly predict how that's going to play out, or for that matter, what the cost would be. I'll do it for you, but it's going to be 2x.
But if we postpone it, we can do it in-house with staff. We just can't do it at the beginning of the summer.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
So
Could we?
I realize we talk about the busy summer season. When I look at data that's come across my desk, and please don't ask me to quote from where right now, but it seems to me like mid-August through September and October, we see a bigger uptick than we have been seeing in other times of the year.
Yeah.
Is that usually generally on the weekends, though? I mean, that's when I was running the bed and breakfast. August 15th, traffic died. And then weekends were full. But that was a bunch of years ago.
I think that's still true, Chip. Like, if you look at the overall traffic per week, I think it starts to move to the weekends in the fall. I also think we have other things that are happening this fall within this town that are going to drive traffic even more.
Yeah.
Certainly with things changing at the flagship store up at LL Bean. So it's really hard to punt at this point. But I think wait, get the feedback, wait, see if we get the money or not, and then
That's what I think too, because I'm not.
let Brett go home.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't feel super inclined to spend a ton of money.
Thank you.
I mean, honestly, sort of this level of discussion is what's happened at the staff level too. And there's frankly no real clear answer that anybody feels comfortable really pushing as an advocacy for a recommendation. And I think that means something. And I think we're going to know a lot more within a relatively short period of time about timing, about available resources, that personally I like to push as much as anybody. But I think that there is some wisdom to waiting a couple weeks and figuring out where we're at from a resource standpoint. If nothing else, from a public buy-in perspective, the fact that we have hustled to get grant dollars to install the equipment and lower the cost, I think that means something, personally.
So could I make a proposal for the plan that we're being asked to adopt?
Please do.
Is to simply change the word summer to 2020, like strike it or make it fall, and keep it in there, with the intention of doing it, knowing that you can bring us new information every 2 weeks, and that reality could change. I do agree that much with Maine and Bow, we also need to see that trial when school is in session, because Main Street traffic is entirely different. We know that between when it is summer and it's peak visitor season, and then when it's fall and it is schools in session, buses are moving, parents are moving, and we still have visitors. And I agree that that really is the peak time that we need to be measuring. I recognize also that the VCI will be done at that point. And so I think we still will have an opportunity to gather that data. I don't think that trial should hold up the final report of the VCI. And if what it is pointing to is a four-way stop there with the build-out that's been described, or it's just the build-out, whatever that report is, I think just like this, we have the ability to go back and say, we don't want that. And I recognize that would be, again, complex, because if we adopt the plan with the engineering from Stan Tech and it's approved by us and DOT, that we would need to go back and amend that. But we also know that the VCI plan is going to be built out in sections, and I think inevitably there will be changes to that plan because the realities are going to change as we're building it out. So I want to recognize that it is complex and the timing is difficult. But I think even if we already have a plan, we could still gain insight from that data.
Sure.
I would second that, and also just reiterate that it's just a work plan, right? It's not an ordinance that says we must do this and we have to do this. This is just what our intention is. Yeah. So I think that expresses what our intention is. So I would support that. And I also just want to call out that though we've been focused entirely on one sentence, there are 4 pages worth of economic development plans that you put in front of us. So I just commend you for that, and thank you for all the work you put into all the other stuff in the document that is so, I am so much supportive of it that it doesn't merit all that discussion.
Appreciate that.
You're doing such a good job.
So in terms of that item, do folks agree with keeping it in as amended? So basically saying implement 2026 trials at School, Elm and Main, and Mallet Traffic Light.
Next summer.
I just said 2026. Yeah, next to the summer, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So for also for the item number 6, for complete strategic plan for multi-use paths, does that include Route 1 north and south?
Yeah. Cool. So it's a good point. And just to close the loop, I was just looking at my phone because I wanted to share with you all that in addition to the School and Elm sketch that we've seen, we're going to have a Main and Bow rendering, and we're also going to have sketches for the Frost Gully Culvert crossing down near Maine Beer Company, that Route 1 area, Mallet Drive intersection. So we'll see some sketches for that key area, the Howard Place intersection, which is a little further south. So now we'll start to see how this all ties together, right? And then the corridor just north of Shaw's. So the ability to see this whole corridor is as a piece, as a whole, rather, it's going to be valuable. We'll learn a lot from that.
Thank you very much.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Wait,
Brett.
You're not done. I was just thanking you for the Route 1 piece, all of it, really.
Just to follow up, I do appreciate that the strategic plan for multi-use path is just word for word what the council just approved for its goal about that. Just out of curiosity, you spoke briefly about the number 7 on infrastructure, the MOU process, and I know we've been going around and around about the route for that path for a long time. And we've discussed alternatives to that, sticking with the roads, and whether that's Route 1 or South Freeport Road and Pine Street. I'm just curious, is that effort to build those MOUs also a way to sort of pressure test whether that is viable, so that we sort of get a sense of whether those landowners are interested in cooperating with that proposal?
I do. I think it could accomplish that. And it could also help hone in on the right way to piece that together. And there's a few different options that could accommodate it. Leaping off points could be South Freeport Road. You could go a little further north, on Route 1. And so there is qualifying the interest, but also starting to hone in on what the ideal route would be.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have an idea? So for some of the projects, we're thinking about how, or tools we could use to fund them. Is there any idea for how we would fund an off-road path?
It would be, there's the beauty of the on-road is you're in the right-of-way, and DOT can support that. The off-road would be, there's grant programs for that as well. It would probably be a little bit slower than what might be accomplished with Maine DOT, but that's something that we could look at. And it's also, the Concord Gully TIF has a recreational trail element to it. So there are some TIF dollars that could be used for matching funds that could leverage grants and donations as well.
Great.
Doesn't the one for LL Bean also have?
That's Concord, yeah.
That's the Concord
Gully.
Gully, okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? So I don't think we need to get fancy and say as amended. We know it's just a plan. Councilor Lawrence.
Be it ordered that the town council endorses the Community Vision Implementation Work Plan 2.0, which aligns municipal resources in the ongoing effort to implement the community's vision of reinvigorating the downtown, conserving rural open space and natural areas, investing in bicycle and pedestrian facilities to support active lifestyles, supporting smart growth and infill to mitigate climate change, and welcome new housing for a variety of household types.
Second.
Thank you very much for reading that very full paragraph. It was Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, officially, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 31-26. This is to consider action relative to 2026 short-term rental registration renewals. We have our town clerk, Chris Wolf, here to introduce the item.
So I'll make this really brief. The ordinance says that I do need to report to you our short-term rental information once a year following the renewal period. I did a comparison from last year to this year just to let you see that things are pretty stable. We do have an additional, since I did this report, we have an additional pending short-term rental. I did send out letters to 4 people for noncompliance. One of those people has now submitted and paid the late fee, so we have those numbers changed. We also refer to the police department and code enforcement to see if they've had any complaints. Codes had no complaints. The police department did receive 3 complaints this year from short-term rentals. 2 of them were single incident ones with no repeat issues. The third one did have a few calls. They spoke with the owner of the property. The tenant has moved and the property is going to be on the market. So, any questions?
Well, I guess it would be for the chief, but had multiple, stemming from their tenant, so it was more than a short-term, it sounds like it was more than a short-term rental.
It sounded to me like more than a short-term rental. It sounded like they might have been renting, but
maybe they were paying like a
because we
monthly.
ran the report based on the address, it did pick that up.
Because we have multiple properties that are registered as short-term, but may enter into winter rentals or longer-term rentals.
Are we utilizing the software via GPCog?
Not yet. I think Chris has been a little inundated at 50% in her office.
That
So I
is,
think the
quite
plan is
fair.
to try to bring that together after.
That makes sense. That's very fair.
I just want to thank you again for your diligence in doing all of the follow-up that you do, not with all of the licensing. Dogs first, now short-term, because I do know you put in a lot of energy into really trying to help people get into compliance for the least amount of money possible.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions for Chris? All right, Counselor Sparta.
Be it ordered that the council accepts the report of the 2026 short-term rental renewals.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 7-0. All right, item 32, I know we're getting there. 32-26. This is to discuss amendments to our shellfish license fees. This has been introduced a few times, but now we have some concrete guidance on what we can and cannot do that Sophie will introduce.
So I think this is one of those items that I'm going to introduce in kind of two parts, one being today and one being a little bit later down the road. We did receive guidance from the town attorney that we can no longer charge a water quality fee. We can rework the license structure and charge one license fee and internally divide that however council wants us to. We're getting ready to go into renewals, and I'm not ready to bring you back a new license fee structure. I think that's something that the Shellfish Commission is going to need to work with staff on. We propose, Chris, Charlie, and I kind of worked behind the scenes and took proposals to the Shellfish Commission, and they accepted them all. In a couple places we had question marks, and so they filled in the blanks specific to resident and non-resident senior commercial and senior recreational licenses. So what you'll see is down the line, we are charging essentially what the license fee is minus the water quality. When we got to the senior commercial and residential, those were simply charging the water quality fee. So the commission is recommending $5 for a resident license, $10 for a non-resident license in both of those circumstances.
Any questions?
Is there a fund that has been built up from the water quality fees in the past, and what happens to that?
Yes, there is. It's going to stay right there. The attorney is giving us guidance on that, and as soon as that guidance is complete, I will bring it back to council.
Part two, okay.
Yep.
I will say, sort of the topic that was the catalyst to this digging on the fees was around a proposal for a research or a project. I was told that the Shellfish Commission will be bringing a proposal to fund that for 2026, 2027. So I expect that to be a topic during our workshop with them in April.
If I may, you might ask, well, Sophie, why didn't you just put the two together? Because people are used to paying that fee. As soon as the resident fee goes above $200, we are limited in what we can charge for the non-resident fee. So it can be double as long as it's 200 or less. As soon as it goes over 200, it can only be 150% of resident. So we thought it was just best to peel the...
Our policy or state policy?
That's
State.
DMR. Do I have that one right? Yep.
I think there's a typo. Be it that the 2026 shellfish license fee be adopted and that the no.
Oh, and that no water quality fee
Yeah.
charged.
That's okay. And that no. All right, I can just read it. Are we ready? Any other questions? Okay, I can read it. Be it ordered that the 2026 shellfish license fees be adopted and that no water quality fee be charged for 2026.
Second.
Any, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on to item 33-26. This is for a new liquor license for Crepe Elizabeth. Anything to share on this, Chris?
I do not. Dawn might be on. She thought she might be on. No.
Okay, that's okay.
Councilor Sparta, can you describe where in the building Crepe Elizabeth is?
Absolutely. So it's the former Sparta Sips and Subs right down at the bottom of the Mallet Building, right back here. We had a liquor license with no problems at that area, and I actually have gotten to know Dawn quite well and would speak highly of her and her ability to do business there for us. Great.
Any other questions? Okay, Councillor Pillsbury.
Be it ordered that a new liquor license for Don Miller doing business as Crepes for Days LLC located at 7 Mill Street, Freeport be approved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I haven't been yet, and I really got to get there. All right. Next up is to consider action relative to the fiscal year 2027 tax due dates and interest rates. We have our finance director, Jessica Malloy, here.
Yeah, so this is just my annual approach before you to be able to set the tax due dates and interest rates for the upcoming fiscal year. So this will be for FY27. We usually, once the state publishes their interest rate, we usually come before you to get this established, so we don't enter our new fiscal year without this in place.
So nothing new and exciting, just standard.
Standard.
Great.
So do we do we just take what the state says for an interest rate, or can we change that? Is that?
No.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, there are stipulations that the state gives the delinquent tax rate for the year. I think that if we had a different rate, we wouldn't be able to change it more than 4% from between what was published and what we would adopt.
I mean, for year over year?
Yes.
Oh.
You can't you can't have a 2%, I think it's a 2% change year over year on the rate, and then we can't be different by the state more than 4%.
Okay.
Up and down?
No, down.
Yeah.
You can be more by more than 4%?
Cannot go above.
State has a cap. We can't go over the
State has
cap.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be for lowering it, but.
I remember asking about that in another year, but like, why don't we be nice guys and lower it? But it was also pointed out that by lowering it, we put ourselves behind other creditors, and it's just harder to collect the money, and this would impact people's houses and land as opposed to other things. So it made sense to me at the time to keep it at the cap.
In 25 years, I have never been in a town that adopted a rate less than what the state put at the max.
So we could be the leaders in this movement.
Well, just keep in mind, we do have a revenue line in the budget that is based on penalties and interest earned, and if it's, reduced, that will impact the amount of revenue that gets collected by the town, which creates, budget constrictions.
And we were talking about $50, 75.
Well, I wish it was that little, but.
No, I mean, the issue is that I would think that most people that are delinquent are people that we're trying to help with.
So you would be surprised. The people who we're trying to help, we tend to have them all paid on time. The delinquent ones tend to be LLCs or corporations or absentee landlords.
Well, then 12%.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Sorry to say, Councillor Smith.
Be it ordered that 1/2 of the fiscal year 2027 committed taxes for real estate be payable on November 16th, 2026, with interest at the rate of 0.583 per month or 7.0% per annum to be charged from November 17th, 2026, and that the second half of the fiscal year's 2027 committed taxes for real estate be payable on May 17th, 2027, with interest at the rate of 0.583 per month or 7.0% per annum to be charged from May 18th, 2027. Be it further ordered that the fiscal year 2027 committed taxes for the personal property be payable on November 16th, 2026, with interest at the rate of 0.583 per month or 7.0% per annum to be charged from November 17th, 2026. Be it further ordered that an interest rate of 0% per month or 0% per annum be established for overpayment and or prepayment of taxes.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, so next we will consider action to amend the Freeport fee schedule related to Winslow Park nightly campsite fees. Sophie, take it away.
So I don't know if Matt wants to take it away. It's okay. Okay. So I did prepare a background memo. There are multiple fee structures at Winslow Park, and first I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Caroline Pelletier, who is listed as a participant, but I'm hoping Tom will bring her up, or maybe I need to, as a panelist. But the fee structure at Winslow Park has multiple components, and the Winslow Park Commission has been working their way through those components and making some decisions. Earlier this year, Council voted to charge one rate for Harb Cottage all 18 weeks and adopted that. Caroline has got, I think, all but 2 of the weeks filled as of today. We also had previously briefly discussed seasonal campsites, and those seasonal campsites are we're moving the 9% sales tax that the town has been absorbing onto those seasonal campsite fees, and Winslow Park Commission really wants to see that settle and then come back next year and talk about additional increases. At the March 9th meeting, we went in ready to talk about miscellaneous park fees and the nightly campsite rentals. The miscellaneous park fees, I think, given the transition in staff, we just don't have a handle on what is being sold in terms of quantity or pricing at this moment. So the commission thought it would be a really good idea to just keep those fees the same and collect data for this year. So Caroline and Min are working together on a purchase POS system, point of sale system, that will help the staff be able to kind of track that a little bit easier. I don't mean like a fancy software, I just mean like a register. We talked at length about the fee structure. And one of the things that I just want to say to start all of this is between the 9th and today, staff has learned a lot about Winslow Park and the Think reservation system, where we're pulling data from. So some of the information that you have here tonight, the commission might not have had full access to. So just be aware of that. The commission is recommending that we increase campsites rates by 15% and round to the nearest dollar. There's a misprint in your agenda. It says 5 cents. We mean $1. So in the background, I laid out or Caroline, I don't remember which one of us wrote this, laid out the different fee structure. So if you go into the reservation software, there are essentially 4 different nightly fees. You can have an inland site, and you're either tenting for $35 as a resident on the, you're either tenting for $35 or you have an RV for $45. If you have a waterfront site, you're either tenting for $45 or have an RV for $50. So all of the calculations were based on what we could find in Think Reservation. We found very old fee structures from like 2016 that talked about resident fees after the commission, where we really could pull those out. The resident fees are inland, $13 for a tent, $15 for an RV, and waterfront, $14 for a tent and $16 for an RV. What was happening is everybody would register with the initial 4 that I gave you, and then we would go back in manually when they came, if they talked about it, if they provided a license, whatever it was, and we see where that has been discounted on the back office. So let's talk a little bit about what we have. We currently have 81 rentable campsites. 23 are waterfront sites, 58 are inland sites. So these are different than the, so anyway, they're there. When we are running numbers, the number of days in a season are averaging between 128 and 124 and 128. So we picked 126, seemed reasonable. And so when we use that number, there are 6,038 available inland campsite nights. And there are 2,893 available waterfront campsite nights. When we looked for the last 5 years, we are pretty well booked on waterfront. If you look, we have 95% occupancy. And we are about a little under 60% for inland sites. We're pretty mixed. It's essentially 60-40 on tents at 43%, RVs at 57%. And when we look across last season, we see that 419 nights were manually discounted. So most of them discounted to one of those $13, $14, $15, $16, $18. And 96 nights were discounted to no charge. That's because we have that period of time at the end of the season where we open the park up for non-residents to register free of charge to use the park. So, we good so far? Okay. So you might say, why are we worried about this? We haven't really had aggressive rate increases. So we are projected to end FY26 with a Winslow Park annual budget deficit of between $140,000 and $165,000. So we have seen that number jump depending on how much capital investment has been done. But if you look at the last 3 years, we were negative almost $60,000 2 years ago, negative about $4,000 this past year, and now projected to be higher because of the bath. A lot of that's the bathhouse. We are also addressing some deferred maintenance issues that the former park manager had identified. We knew they were on the horizon. We're hoping to tackle them and some code issues for the summer. So we currently have, if you took all the Winslow Park Fund cash that the town of Freeport holds, and you added all the money that has been earned this fiscal year, and you subtracted all of the expenses because Jessica makes those transactions on a calendar basis, not based on when the money comes in. We currently have a fund balance of $656,730. You just voted to take $130,000, essentially approve us to go $130,000 into that. And the Adelaide Winslow Harb Trust, as of December 31st of 2025, had a balance of $726,188.86. We do not have direct access to that money. It is held by a trustee. They give us distributions once a year. In 2023, the distribution usually comes in December. In 2023, it was $9,600. We just received the one for 2024. It was $13,835, and we expect the next one in December of 2026. So, good here? Okay. The commission kind of wanted me last time to give them a sense of what are the other rates around, and it's hard because we don't offer a lot of amenities in terms of hookups at the site, electricity at the site. However, we are in a glorious place with showers and, other a boat ramp, playground, that kind of thing. So we did look, and I provided those to you. I don't know if you need me to go through them, if you'd like me to, okay. So when we look at what the commission is recommending, they are recommending to go for non-resident with tents from inland 35 to a tent of 40, from waterfront 45 to waterfront 52. These are non-resident. For RV, inland would be 45 to 52, and for waterfront would be 50 to 58. Resident would go from inland would go in a tent would go from $13 to $15, and an RV would go from $15 to $17. On the waterfront for a resident would go from $14 to $16, and in an RV from $16 to $18. The one thing I just want to remember to let you know is that there are no tax dollars supporting Winslow Park. Right now, the park is an enterprise fund. It lives off the balance of its proceeds and fund balance with trustee distributions. Caroline is also going to tell me I need to remind everybody that we have not talked about a group shelter rate, and we cannot find one written down. So we want to, not group shelter, group campsite rate. But I'm going to let her talk now if she would like.
Hey, I'm going to pull out my cheat sheet here. So we have gone through the website, some papers that were found, and some different fee structures. I think we have a pretty good handle on what we've been charging. It wasn't until this week that we got clarity that we have one group site that we rent out. It's referenced in the ordinance. We don't have a ton of information online other than you need to call the park manager to book it. But when we were in the gatehouse this week, we did get some more information. So we have one group site. It accommodates up to 30 people, 10 tents, and 6 cars. So it is a large site, and we are charging that out at $75 a night. I don't know how many times we have ever passed or how frequently it's used. I do know we have had one interested party this year call about it, but I don't see it anywhere on a fee schedule. So even if we were just to adopt what we have, that would be clean up the paper trail. But if you're looking at adjusting other rates, I did want to bring that up tonight in case you want to adjust it. Again, we've been kind of learning as we go, so this is not something that we brought up for the commission to review. The setting of the rates is important because we are going live April 1 with reservations for the 2026 season. Happy to answer any questions.
My first question is this enough? Or is this a step towards actual need?
Yeah, the other question I have is, we're charged $75, it's for the whole site? That should be probably a lot more than that, because if you have 10 people, or 10 tents, it's $7 a tent. And every other tent site we're doing is 40. So I'm not saying we need to make it as high, but if you made it 20.
So I'm going to do my best. When you ask me if it's enough, you have a commission that is weighing in. They're an advisory board like other advisory boards to council. It clearly, if you look, every $5 that we raise the nightly campsite rates, we increase about $30,000 of revenue, give or take. So when we look at going up between $5 and $8 a site, if we're thinking we're going to be $140,000 in the hole, that makes us $110,000 in the hole. So I don't know, I can't answer your question of is it enough, because I don't know if your goal for this season is to get us to breaking even, if it's to be comparable, if it's, what it is. I know that the commission, and Barry is going to correct me if I'm wrong, spent a lot of time, and Matt, spent a lot of time going round and round, really not wanting to increase fees. What is tough is that there are things that we do that are not designed to break even. There are amenities that we give that are set up to be subsidized by taxpayers. This is not one of them. It's also very interesting to see, this is set up to break even and to be able to save for stewardship. So I can't answer that question because it really depends on what the council's goal is.
So I have a love relationship with Winslow Park. As the town cub master for a bunch of years, and then, I worked at the troop level with the Boy Scouts. We were able to enjoy the septic field down below the shelters as a free place to camp. Our Freeport kids would camp twice a year. Once down there, once we were nicely hosted at Wolf's Neck Farm. And it gave the kids a chance to experience both of those things, which honestly, pretty magical. And again, that kind of gets back to what we want our kids to enjoy. So I hope we're able to continue doing that for years and years and years to come. I do think, is it enough? I think that because we afford residents the ability to camp down there for free in the off-season, it might be good in the future to look at the waterfront resident fees. But honestly, I don't think big changes need to happen at this point. I don't think this is an emergency, and I think I'd rather spend time figuring out why we can't fill those inland sites to 100% to get the money up. Whether that's promoting Winslow Park a little bit more downtown while we're doing all this other wayfinding and explaining to people how beautiful our town is, and it's not just on Main Street. I think there's other things we can do. It feels like enough right now, but let's figure out what else we need to do and take care of the park the way it needs to be taken care of.
In many ways, I think this is a year of identifying, looking having a holistic view. And you do have a workshop scheduled with Winslow Park Commission next Tuesday. So hoping we can kind of talk more about kind of the policies and the vision.
I'll bring pictures.
I attended the commission meeting, so I heard much of the discussion around the desire to increase fees and, also at one point, the conversation around the non-resident fees was just to go $5 across the board, but then it moved to a percentage, so it was an even or more even increase. And I think that question of, is it enough, as we've said, sort of went around and around because we have not quite yet identified all of the things we need the money for. And I think there is a willingness on the part of the commission to take that data once we have it into account and make further recommendations. I will say that I think that the resident fees are probably too low, given how much they are discounted off of the regular fees. I think it would be in line with still offering a resident discount in the middle of the season to have those rates be closer to 20 and 25, which I still think is a very inexpensive rate to be able to go and do. We call them inland, but you're just on the other side of the water. I mean, you're on a peninsula. Every site there is essentially a waterfront site. So to be able to go and camp at that location, I think $20 and $25 is a really reasonable rate for residents. So I would not be opposed. And there was a conversation about that, and there is a strong desire on the part of the commission to keep it affordable for residents. And I would say that goal would still be attained even if you started to make the resident rate a little closer to the non-resident rate.
Could I ask that? I'm fine with these rates for this year. For next year, as we develop a more comprehensive capital plan for Winslow Park and we have a better idea of what our annual expenditures might be, we can ask the commission to say, try and raise enough to cover what we're going to spend every year, and help them come back with a structure that would do that.
So it sounds like this is good for this year, and we will continue to collect data and.
I want to add two things to it.
Sure.
So Caroline found the group site after we published the agenda. So I think it would be awesome if we could just set a fee for the group site, even if it's the $75 that's currently here. We normally have a fee to fall back on when we charge somebody. And the other issue, I'm going to let Caroline talk about it because this has been her project today.
Project has been shelter reservations. So we used to have 2 shelters at Winslow. We have 1 large shelter left. We're starting to get quite a few inquiries into the shelter. So we rent out the shelter for 1 time a day, regardless of whether they're using it for a half day or a whole day. And there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. We charge $200 and we give a $25 discount to Freeport residents. The issue that has come up is that we do have some local groups that like to use it in season, who in the past, the RSU specifically, have not been charged the group shelter rate or the per person rate when coming into the park. Because this has come up, we want to be a good partner, but when Sophie and I talked about it, we love that hundreds of kids come to the park, and we've already had inquiries for hundreds of kids coming to the park. But we do realize that does have an impact on the park. We have bathrooms, we have maintenance, we have trash. They're using it. So there's the shelter fee and then the per person fee, which would be a couple dollars a person, neither of which been consistently charged in the past for schools that are part of the RSU. So we wanted to get some clarification. We're not looking for a fee change. It's just if we are going to exempt certain groups from the fees that are currently in place at the park.
We are purposefully not expressing an opinion on that.
So I know in the past, the Pine Tree Council of the Boy Scouts would actually run a summer camp down at Winslow Park. And each year would be charged for the use of the park, including entrance fees and everything else. So there is a background to that and groups using those shelters. I will say that I work with the RSU to grow kelp out in Casco Bay, along with a bunch of other schools through Booth Bay Sea and Science. And they do have an event in the spring where they receive said kelp at the dock and then go and, they have a weigh off and it's a competition and it's really cool and it's, great citizen science. One of the things that we enjoyed with the Boy Scouts at over at Wolf's Neck is while they were happy to host us there and let us be there for free, we did a day of service. So each spring when it was time for that area to get cleaned up, before we got to use it preseason, we cleaned all the campsites. I don't know if we can work out something similar with the RSU, but I bet you we could get those kids to go down there and do some work, and it wouldn't be a bad thing.
Be good.
So,
Good idea.
yeah, I'm open for anything. I will say that I do want to make a distinction because we have groups looking at two different times, right? If they're coming in before Memorial Day, which we have about 300 kids, I think, planning to come in before Memorial Day, it's free. We don't charge anybody. We don't have any amenities really out there. So we'll plan accordingly, but we won't have like ranger staff and stuff like that out there probably. The question is, based on the fee structure that council has adopted, we are supposed to be collecting $2 and $3 for everybody who goes across. Caroline and I are going to have to look at the fee structure because the last shelter rental I saw was $250 with a break to $200 for a resident. So we'll have to figure that out. We're not saying we should now charge these people. We're saying this is a public policy decision. If you say we want kids to be able to come in, great. If you want to say, if kids want to come in school groups want to come in for free, they've got to do some kind of service, great. If you want to say only RSU 5 and Freeport schools can come in for free, or, I just need boundaries that you would like me to operate within.
I have an opinion, and it's town park. And if we run down those numbers, town residents are going to have to pay for said park. So first of all, I think it should be, if we extend this to people, it should be for maybe extended to RSU 5, but it should be Freeport based. Awesome if the Yarmouth school system wants to come over and use Winslow Park. They could put that in their budget.
We could also maybe extend to them that if they wanted it for free, they give us an in-service day or something to that effect. Someone's battery's low. But we could extend, here are the fees. But if you don't want to pay those fees, here's how you can work it off.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's hard to ask school kids to do the in-service day only because they're so pinched for time in their school calendars that they might not have enough extra time, but they can also just come an hour early and pitch in. But I like the idea of offering it to RSU 5 for free, and I wouldn't make a distinction between Freeport, Pownell, and Durham. If you're an RSU 5, you get to use the park for free as just a good neighborly thing to do.
I'd also recommend that the group site be $100 instead of 75. $10 a tent is pretty cheap.
We're having a charging issue over here. No pun intended, but I mean, hey.
Can I just clarify one point for you guys?
Caroline, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't tell if you could see it or not. So I just want to clarify, preseason, multiple towns have reached out. I said, you know, we don't offer anything, we're not open, so we're not going to charge you, but you can come use it. From the little bit I do know about this, it's really just been schools within the RSU, and I just want to clarify that that does include community programs too. It does have a week of summer camp down there, and they do have some other childcare programs. So those were other RSU-related inquiries. So I just want to make that clarification for you guys before you make a decision.
Caroline, are those RSU programs that are run during the summer being run by the RSU or being offered by the RSU?
I would say both. So they offer Camp Seaside, which they used to run it at Winslow. They don't anymore, but one of their field trips is to Winslow. There is one other week-long camp that I'm aware of that they offer with a partner for a fee. So a little bit different scenario. And my understanding is there's been no entrance fee charged. Although in that case, the kayak camp, they are not using a shelter. So it would just be the entrance fee per pupil.
What about like boat launch, stuff like that for that camp?
Good question. I don't know. I would go, my assumption, not fact-checked, based upon my conversations with the RSU and Peter Wagner, who have been great and very helpful, is that they probably haven't been paying. They also might be getting there early enough before the gatehouse opens, so they're not getting charged. But again, I have not been able to fact-check that at this point.
I know that some of the stuff that I've been involved with over the years, because I have done a bit of kayaking around Freeport, and have been involved with a couple of those programs. I don't know that we've ever charged for any of that. And I would hesitate at this point in this year to look at those charges, but I think it's something that we need to look at in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a question I have, and I've been a little in and out. Is this something that is like we need to clarify immediately, or can we run business as usual this year and get more information?
So I think the only thing I need is the direction that the council would like me to go this year. I don't necessarily need to change. If we're deviating from a fee council set, you guys need to tell me how to do that.
I think part of the issue is that because it's a town facility and it's fees that we set, once we set them, they need to be applied equally to everybody. So if there are going to be different rates for different groups, or if there are certain groups that are exempted, then we just need to state what those are so that they are part of the fee schedule, so that the fee schedule is being applied.
And the question is like, do we, because I feel like information's coming in actively, like everything is happening right now. So do we want to give guidance on here's what the fee should be for what we know, or do we kind of pause here, implement what we've discussed and is on paper, and wait for more information to come in?
I think we do that because everyone's kind of planned for what it is, and then all of a sudden, oh, they've raised it. It's not a lot of money, but you don't want to affect anyone's plans because of that.
I think that's true of those summer camps and such too. Having been in that position, I know that they're out there selling that program, trying to fill up those programs, and really, again, it comes back to, wouldn't we love to have every kid have the opportunity to
absolutely
be out and enjoying the water?
I also think too, I would want to engage those groups and those stakeholders to kind of understand.
I'd be more interested in looking at that stuff in the future from a risk mitigation standpoint and checking on insurance and things like that. Then I think we've got more risk there than whether we charge them $2 to come in or not.
Yeah, we should look at this again in September so we can print them out early enough that everyone can plan on it.
So Back to Carolyn's question about, there's the shelter fee and then there's the group use. So I don't know if in the past, and I think the issue is we can't find there's no published shelter rate at the moment. So I'm not sure what that's based on, if it's per hour or if it's by half a day.
I thought it was.
In the past, the shelter rate has been for the entire day. So you can't split it with someone else. It's just.
It's a fixed fee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like you have it for the day.
Oh, it is?
I think so.
It is a published rate. I'm trying to pull it up right now. It's on the website. We're working on cleaning up the website, but on the user fee page, it is listed, for the large one, it's $200. Freeport residents are $25 less. Plus, they pay the day use fee per person, which they can either charge people at the gate or we keep a card on file and cash it out when they leave.
So are you just looking then for us to affirm that or decide that it's going up?
So we had a couple different things. We had the group tent site, which is the one set at $75, which Chip had an idea on. And then the shelter rate, we weren't proposing to change. It's just more, we've become aware quickly that the RSU groups in particular at this point are sometimes using the shelter and not paying that fee and not paying the per person fee. Sometimes both in one situation or sometimes separate. So those are the things we just wanted to clarify. We are not looking to change the shelter fee at this point.
Do you feel like you have your direction?
Barry has a question.
Barry?
Can I offer a comment?
Sure, please, that'd be great.
Please.
My name is Barry Sachs. I'm the current chair of the Winslow Park Commission. And I'd just like to point out that on the matter of finances that have had very little attention in the past, I have tried to encourage the commission to look at this whole issue. And as Sophie has mentioned some time ago, many months ago, that one of the jobs of the commission really is to think about maintaining the fund balance roughly where it is. It's in a reasonably healthy position right now at about $656,000, which actually is down from previous years a little bit. And we've got some additional heavy expenses coming up this year, which will come out of that fund. But I think the overriding issue here really is, we can talk about all the details, which we've done here tonight, but the overriding issue is to maintain a healthy fund balance overall. And toward that end, I have really tried to encourage the commission, a bit unsuccessfully so far, is to look at all the rates, even Ken, as you suggested, ramp charges, boat launch charges, kayak launch fees, etc. Everything in detail. The sewer dumping fee, for example, and group shelter fees, and all the fees for everything that happens in the park. Every little bit helps to maintain a healthy fund balance. And at this time, really all we're looking at is campsite fees. Fine, that's a baby step in the right direction, but we have a workshop with the town council coming up, I think, in a week, and we can talk in detail more about all of these things. But at the moment, I think it's appropriate to take the baby step of approving the campsite fees that are before you, and we can talk about all the other details in another week.
Thank you.
That's where I think we are at the moment.
That sounds, I think that's what I'm hearing from you all as well. Yeah, so Am I correct? I think we're ready for a,
Well stated.
yeah, thank you, Barry. Great. Sorry, I was a little distracted over here for a second, but we're back. Where am I? Counselor Brown, could you please read be it ordered? And remember that it's $1 not
Yep. Be it ordered that the nightly campsite rental fees at Winslow Park be increased by 15% and rounded to the nearest dollar for the 2026 season.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And we're maintaining the group site.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't.
We didn't add it in there. Should,
You
you want
need
to
to maintain something.
Huh?
We don't
Yeah.
need
You
to.
don't need a vote if you want
Oh,
to.
well, you could still apply the 15%, which
Oh.
would take it to $86.
That gets us, yeah, I mean, that,
Yeah,
That
that
works.
sounds great.
That doesn't, that's still included. That's a nightly campsite rental fee.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. Good job. Okay, with that, we are moving on to our public comment period for folks who are virtual. Do we have anybody? All right. We will go ahead and close public comment. Moving on to other business, we already addressed item number 1 with Brett earlier, so moving on to our budget workshop with Jessica. Thank you for your patience, Jessica.
She was prepared.
No, sure.
Tis the season, right? Yeah, so I just really want to take a moment to say thank you to council for allowing me to be absent at the presentation of the capital plan. I was listening for a while in the airport and made it through the public works portion of the presentation before we were cruising altitude. So that's when I lost connection. Do not touch. So Sophie did a great job in my place taking you through the presentation. I just want to point out and remind you that the presentation this year was really geared to give you a snapshot of the plan, because at this stage in the game, we're going through the 5-year capital plan. We will talk about the year 1 appropriation when we get to the budget, that part of the budget process in a few weeks, and get through to talking about the actual appropriation of the budget. So this, I really tried to gear the presentation more towards informing you of what is in the plan so that you understand you're adopting a plan, a process of how we want to move the town forward over the next 5 years and what that may look like. So at this point, I guess I'm not sure how council wants to approach going through the capital plan, whether there are just questions and comments and discussion that wants to happen. If you want me to take you through the articles,
Yeah.
I don't know how much time council has spent with the large packet.
Yeah, so I can kind of remind folks of where we left it, which was, take time to look through it and send Jessica and Sophie questions. I don't think anybody has at this point. I don't know, we have Earl here as well tonight, so we could go through the Public Works budget with Earl. This will also be a large part of our agenda with the Finance Committee on Monday. So that's just to kind of give folks an option for what your energy level is right now, and B, how we would prefer to feel like we're confidently understanding this budget.
Are we still going through the process with department heads where we basically focus in on their area and ask detailed questions around the expenditures, the need for it, and how the planning for it has gone?
I really appreciated that process last year.
So I think what Jessica and I are asking is, how do you want us to approach this? If that worked for you, we can easily make a calendar to have people show up in certain places at certain times to be able to have those discussions. I don't know what your bandwidth is. Earl is here tonight if you'd like to start tackling some of his stuff. If you are crispy and we want to move this forward to Monday, I think we can do that. It is up to you.
I'm aware it's 9:20, but I do think we have a lot to go through with limited time. And so if we have the capacity to have Earl go through his budget tonight, I think that might be a good idea. With the idea of going through what we did last year, where department heads kind of went through their items.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, to kind of give you a perspective and overview, the design for this year's capital plan was really maintenance. So, typically when I get to what we have for the plan, the most recent years aren't going to look that different from prior year. So a lot of the conversation, a lot of the communication is going to feel and should be repetitive because the intent is to follow a plan, right? Not just throw new stuff every year. That's not really a plan. That's just telling you what we need for the year. So this has been a mind shift that we've done over the last few years, is to really let department heads know that this is a plan and you have to be prepared for the long haul for this, right? So more than happy to do the conversations and get department heads in. I just wanted to caveat it with, we're really trying to encourage the awareness of it being a capital long-term plan and strategic planning of what we want to see for the town. So year over year, at least for the beginning years of the plan, you're not going to see significant difference. You might see a little bit of shifting here or there, but for the most part, we're trying to set you up for success to have a strategy of how you want to move the town forward.
So is this year 5 is pretty much the new stuff, right?
Yep.
And year 1, 2, 3, and 4, we've seen, year 1, we've seen 5 times.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And like I say, years 3 and 4, that we're always reviewing and making sure that we're bringing forth the most urgent, things that need to be done.
Right, there's shifting there, but essentially we're trying to stick to this, and surprises happen all the time, so.
Right.
Who would have predicted COVID, right?
Yeah, right.
I appreciate the fact that it is going to be repetitive. I do think, though, that the reason it's helpful to have those conversations with the department heads is, first of all, because those priorities do shift, and it's helpful to have those explanations in terms of why things are getting moved up or possibly pushed back. I also think that it's helpful for us to have that front of mind when we are talking to residents about why we're spending money.
Right. 100%.
On whatever it is we're spending money on.
Absolutely.
So even though we've talked about it for 3 years, that was 1, 2, and 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I do think even though it is repetitive, it's helpful.
Is there a way we can put a little bit of structure around the discussion so that it's a consistent discussion around every department head, and we're looking and focusing enough time on both the upcoming year, the middle years, and the out years, and specifically around, challenges, what's led to any reshuffling of expenditures or proposed expenditures. I'd love to dig into and have a real candid conversation around existing fund balance and how that's going to be used to support a multi-year capital program, because I think we're going to see in a lot of areas that the fund balance, there's a disconnect there. So I think if we had sort of a general framing for everybody and that could structure our conversation, that'll allow us to ask questions as it relates to that general structure without getting us too far afield. Because, for example, we could start asking a million questions around a hot button topic for, police. We could ask Nate, what about body cams? What are we doing with the footage? And, that could take up 45 minutes, and we don't get to the substance around the actual capital expenditures the fund balance and how we're going to long-term pay for this stuff. I think that would help with the framing, keep us on track and keep us moving through the items. One thing, and so I also don't want to put Earl on the spot. I don't know if he was prepared to talk about his budget tonight.
That's why he was here.
Yeah.
Great. But I do have a overarching question as to how we approach future year planned expenditures. Can you talk a little bit about the process for getting proposed pricing for those out years and how you keep it current based on, an expectation for the change in, $1 today versus the cost of something 5 years from now? And is that methodology consistent across every expenditure in the capital plan, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, so this is actually behind the scenes a 20-year plan. And so what you have before you is the streamlined 5-year component. You see only what is upcoming in that 5-year plan, so it's not everything that falls under PD. There's other line items, but they're outside that 5-year plan. So when an item comes up and it's marked within the 5 years, there's typically within the 20-year plan a placeholder for replacement of that item. And those future years get reviewed to make sure they're at a minimum in line with the current pricing, usually with some type of increase. It's not, there's not a lot of science at this point behind it. It could be if it's a, $20,000 for furniture, in 10 years it might be $25,000, just because we're trying to stay within the feasibility of what we can afford in the plan. And the questions you've asked are really what drove last year's communication of just, this is a maintenance plan of what we currently have for capital assets. So when we were talking about visioning and growth, all relevant, applicable things, they just weren't fundamentally established in this plan at the time to be able to, futurize those expenditures and replacements for those new items. So it's a work in progress, to kind of put it that way for you, but there is analysis and review that goes to make sure that if an item is, and if an asset is on the plan, there are future replacements scheduled. It's an Excel spreadsheet that we go through and literally make sure that if we had it on it's why you only see the 5-year component, because there could be 40 lines. And I know the last time it was replaced, and on a 30-year item, it's not on the 20-year plan, but I have it as a line item so that I know when to mark it in the future.
And do you put, a couple questions, do you put items based on, how do you set useful life for items? Do you go by experience, or do you go by, a typical accounting standard? Just because I know there can be a difference between how tough the crew is on a piece of equipment and what we've seen in our typical environment versus what the book might say.
Yeah. So it's kind of a hybrid. I'll say that we typically go by book standards of how long an asset depreciates for and how long it's useful. But that's why you see some changes, because as it approaches and gets into the 5-year, that's when we start doing that analysis to say, you know what, it hasn't been beat on. The forklift can last another year. However, this piece of equipment gets used every day, and we're seeing increased wear and tear on it that might not make it last as long as we thought. So that's where those kind of adjustments come in.
And are you looking at the out-year pricing that you've set on an annual basis and revising it based on what we think
Yes.
inflationary costs might be? And is that formulaic, or
No.
is it ad hoc?
It's ad hoc for me right now.
is there, do you think that that's leaving us with a potential gap in future years that where it may, like, if we, I guess I'd rather, the way I might approach it is, like, have it set formulaically based on, last X years of inflationary cost, and then have it update automatically, and be on the conservative side, so we're striving for a reserve amount that would be enough, rather than sort of
Yeah.
catching ourselves short.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I don't think there's a perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
But I am concerned about the long-term sustainability of our capital plan.
Yeah, for sure. What I guess how I would approach it, I'm not opposed to researching, other methodologies and looking at it. I'll tell you this format has worked since 1980. Not to say that it can't be changed. It has evolved some over time, but it's part of, I think your concern, part of the reason or way we address that is by how we look at the benchmarks, right? It's the 5-year plan and the average 20% of the 20-year plan, right? So we kind of take some of that risk out and look at those benchmarks, because there's a lot of thought of how much do you actually fund the reserves, right? And what's the appropriate level? And so they're just really kind of guidelines all around. And the reality is anything that we have there is better than nothing, which we're approaching times where it feels like the reserves are questionable to what we have in the plan. And that's kind of twofold, right? My response to that is kind of twofold because multiple things have happened over the last few years. One, we went through a horrible rate environment and we just started to kind of come out of that and we're wavering, right? Because it's not perfect. Two, we've lost significant funding sources for the reserves that were longstanding, and we're trying to figure out how to backfill, those losses. And three, we're adding more depth and volume to the capital plan and what we want to see in it because we're trying not to raise taxpayer dollars any more than we need to for growth and forward motion for the town, right? So you have all of these compounding effects that are pushing you one way. So your concern is valid. I don't know that I have a strong, this is the answer. This is just the best effort forth that we're moving forward with.
No, and don't get me wrong, I think we've done an excellent job. I mean, the fact that our debt service is so low that, we made a strategic decision to bond the fire truck. That's great. What I'm concerned about is getting ourselves in a position where our choices are limited. I'd rather know and do an analysis and say, geez, in 7 years, we may not have the reserves to fund what we need to fund without any growth or improvement or additional capital expenditures, because as you said, it's really a maintenance plan. I'd rather know that and make incremental decisions now that put us in a stronger position than get to that point and be like, well, I guess our only option is to bond.
Yeah.
Because I just think that it's a lousy position to be in, and we haven't had that, like you said, and we've always been in a really strong fiscal position. And I just want to ensure that we're forward-thinking enough where we're planning for the 7-10 years down the road and can make smaller, impactful decisions now that set us up for success. That's all.
Yep, and you're not wrong. I feel like we have started to analyze some of that and look at some of the revenue sources. Like I said, we're working with the investment firm on our investments to make sure we're getting, a good return. And the variables there are really what used to be consistent baseline revenue sources for the reserves, right, are now variable revenue sources for the reserves. So you're talking about what we have for operational savings as the largest component, really, of how we fund our reserves. So you might, one approach is to, much like the senior tax, assistance program, putting money in to establish, an expenditure in 1 year. There might be a 1-year hit, but then it's a solid, quote unquote, funding source to help offset those future capital needs. So I feel like I've been pretty consistent in my messaging the last 5 or so years that, there is a concern with the reserves. We've been fortunate in each of those years that there have been mitigating factors to the urgency of it. One of the first years was there was the reestablishment or the refunding of state revenue sharing, right? Because that had been drastically cut for a number of years. And we were conservative in our revenues, and that came in much larger than anticipated. We were able to put almost $1 million 1 year into the reserves because of that conservative nature, right? As time has gone on since then, revenues are kind of compressing more and more because we're relying on them to offset taxes, right? Because we have larger expenditure needs. And much like you guys were just talking about Winslow Park, right? And needing to catch things up because we were just kind of in a status quo mode for a while. The town's kind of been in a similar boat itself. And so it's juggling a lot of balls right now, I'll be honest, of what's right. I think our reserve plan is pretty solid. We get pretty good marks on it with the budget award, as well as it being something that not a lot of communities in the state even do. So we look to a lot of nationwide municipalities and how they run their programs to make sure we're not that far off the mark. And I would say we're not, but always happy to explore new methodologies.
We just tag teamed over here. So I think if it makes sense, Monday, we can talk about sort of like big picture with the Finance Committee. We have a Finance Committee meeting on Monday. Big picture and the structure that I think you've proposed for consistent questions for department heads. And then with the idea of we have a workshop on Tuesday the 24th, which we can split into talking about Winslow and then have a couple of department heads there. And then also on Tuesday, April 7th, have the rest of the department heads there. So kind of pack that into two meetings. That'll give us the opportunity to figure out that structure and for folks to review the budget more in depth. So,
Does it make sense to focus those conversations on year 1, year 5, rather than spending all of our time on 2, 3, 4 in the middle?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it might be interesting for council to be asking what has changed, if there's been change.
Sure.
What is coming up, and the long term. I think it would also be interesting to know if there are things that didn't make it into this cut that are probably, or the things that are coming up next. I don't know if Jessica's going to go there with me or not. But I do think last year when we did this, when the department heads came in, I mean, you're going to spend a bunch of time with Earl. He is the lion's share of the budget, of the capital plan, just because he touches so much of it. But it looks like a lot, but I think when you get to fire rescue, cable, and I just put Brett in because it's like all the TIFs. And honestly, the TIF work, you've already seen the capital
Yeah.
plan for that. So this is just articulating what you guys have already given input into. So I do think it's possible to kind of walk through. Every year I do this, it's different, and it depends on what questions strike you at the time. I do think having the Finance Committee on Monday dig into that big picture of fund balance and how the capital program is funded and that kind of stuff would probably be worthwhile. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm.
And anyone can come to the Finance Committee meeting.
Absolutely.
I will say that I'm steering clear of having any sort of department head conversations during the Finance Committee. We did discuss that as an option, just because I think it's important to keep that in a space where we anticipate the full council to be present, so.
What time is that meeting? Is it 6 or 5?
Yeah.
That one's at 5.
5, yep.
The comment Ken made about, what should we focus on? I don't want to bog us down, but it would be interesting to know, because I'm struggling with this maintenance versus optimization or growth. And I'm sure you get other requests from department heads that don't make it to the cut that we see. How do we address initiatives or
Not really.
proposals? No?
I very rarely cut what department heads ask for in all reality.
On capital.
On capital.
Yeah.
I very rarely take it out of the plan. I'm pretty adamant that nothing goes into year one. I mean, I think if you were to ask them without me in the room, they would tell you, yeah, she doesn't put anything in year one. Because I want you to see a consistent plan year to year and know that we as department heads are planning for the future and not just throwing out fires, right? So that is something I'm usually pretty adamant about. But other than that, it's what department heads should, they have to showcase a need. You get the narratives, you see what, it's not just a willy-nilly throw out, oh, I think I want this. They have to showcase the need, and as long as they can provide a narrative and show the thought that they're planning, it goes in the plan. I don't view it as my decision to be like, no. It's I'm the conduit from them to you to say, how do we make this plan work, right? And so I just put the numbers to the plan to say, well, we can't, I don't want to have a 6 million year this year and a 2 million year next year. Let's see if we can make it 4 and 4, right? Or, whatever. So I'm just the conduit of the money.
So, but I guess maybe it's a Sophie question then. How do we, if this isn't a valid statement, tell me, but it seems like we're very practical as a town, and we focus on the things that are within what's been normal and done, and how we continue to do that. And where's the conversation around how we might do things differently or grow or make strategic investments that could have a short-term impact, but a long-term return? And are we at the point where we can do that, or is this, another turn on the whole process? I mean, do you see where I'm trying to go with my question?
So when I look at, right now, our growth and visioning of what we want to do in the community is in large part in the comprehensive town improvements place. That's where we're really building out the changes that you're looking for. And if you look in that section, Earl has completely upended that plan this year. Jessica took the restrictions off Earl and said, we understand that council is changing its vision. So part of our job is to try to keep up with where we think you're going. It's also because one of your goals for the last 2 years has been to create a stable tax base. Part of our goal is if Earl can get $800,000 towards a $1.6 million project, he is going to go after that. If there is a way he can phase that project where it's reasonable, so it's a more reasonable draw each year, he is going to do that. But we flipped things around because Mallet Drive multi-use path came up. So I think on an annual basis, especially in that area, Earl is looking at what have we heard from council, what have we heard from Complete Streets, what does the comprehensive plan say? So we're taking all of those inputs along with how can we best leverage a tax dollar to get us money from some other place, right? So I do see that. We have not had conversations about we're bringing a bunch of new multifamily dwellings into an already dense residential area. What is that going to do to police and fire? It is going to grow operations. It is hard when, on the one hand, we're talking about growth, and on the other hand, we're talking about restricting how much we want to grow in taxes, because operations will drive capital needs. So I think it's a little bit of everything, but I also think we're trying to right-size operations, because what we're hearing loud and clear from the council and the community, and if we shouldn't be taking this message, is we're feeling like we're tapped out. So we're trying to leverage dollars to grow the tax base, so that when we need those dollars, it's not going to hit everybody as hard as it's hitting right now. But we don't have a lot of treasure to buy lots of new vision and growth. So then it comes back to how Jessica is training staff in this idea of priority budgeting, meaning here's your dollar set, and I've seen her do it to a couple of different department heads this year. Here's how much money you have. If this is really important to you and it's brand new, are you not doing something that we have been budgeting before? Like, how can we repurpose those dollars? So I feel like we're a work in progress, Matt, and I feel like every time Jessica and I sit with the council, we get greater insight into what the vision is for the community beyond the VCI or the downtown vision, but just in general. And we implement, we buy a piece of equipment and then we go into maintenance mode with that. The assumption is that we're going to need a grader. There are reasons we assume that. And until you start paving all the roads, we're going to still need a grader. But if we start paving more roads and we have less gravel roads, then Earl is going to be sitting there thinking, do we need a grader? Is this something that we can rent? Is it something like long-term? So that's how we begin to kind of, am I making sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's the way I think we should approach it. The thing that I know for myself is that I am not a visionary, but where do we capture, and this is completely hypothetical, like no one hold me accountable to this, but like, what if Earl said, you know what, we're not going to plow anymore because we can heat all our roads. It's going to cost an infrastructure adjustment, but that will reduce our 40-year plowing costs, and we will all of a sudden not have any costs around that. But it's a huge capital injection of funds. Like, how are we capturing ideas like that and planning for a different Freeport?
So, yeah, because 60 years ago, it was much different than it is today, right? We use different technology, we have different things. I would think you're going to do it a lot like when when other public works directors were talking to each other and you were seeing what they were doing in other cities and towns. And wow, if we had this capital outlay to convert our streetlights to LED, I wasn't here when it happened, but in the community I was in, it was a $100,000 outlay, but then we went from almost $100,000 a year in operating costs down to about $6,000. So for us, it's being part of a larger network where we're constantly being exposed to great ideas. It's about counselors, which a few here have done it, where they drop things on my desk. Isn't this a cool idea? And we might not implement that one thing, but it gets us talking. So I do think we kind of sort of plan for that to some degree, but it gets put on a plan a few years. Like if we had an option of heating all of the streets, which would reduce all of the needs, and there was going to be something we could put on it so the water would never infiltrate it, so we'd never have another pothole. It would just be the most amazing thing ever. Earl would cost that out, come to council, and then we'd be having a conversation about, do we do this street by street? Do we bond it? How are we going to pay back? What is the return on this investment? And it would get planned into here. And believe it or not, you've seen some of that. Just in the 2 years I've been here, you've seen bits and pieces of that. We're a frugal community. Jessica keeps telling me, we are frugal. Sophie, get with the program. So I don't think you're going to see big, huge swings unless there's a huge return on investment. Oh.
I just can't wait to see the clip on Facebook where we're going to start heating the streets next year.
I know, that's so awesome.
Great job,
Jim,
Earl.
Yep, Jim is listening, so we might garner something through the radio tomorrow. You never know.
But in 10 years, isn't that going to be not needed because of climate change?
Earl, do you want to say something?
I would. Listening, I go once a year out west. APWA puts on a public works gathering for all the public works directors in the United States and Canada. And I go there not so much to go to the classroom, but see what technology is being developed all over the United States. So take Maine, we're used to snow, but out west they get twice what we get. And looking at their equipment and what they're using to clear that snow with affects us. Now these are two crazy ideas I come up with, and Peter Joseph told me no. Reflective striping. So your striping in the road is reflective. The problem with that is it's about $20 a gallon more than we pay for paint. And there's a couple of towns that are using it right now, and I'm sort of following them to see how that's going to, if it's going to last. If you had to repaint it every year, it wouldn't be cost effective. Stuff like that. Now this is the one when we got hammered. If I remember correctly, we got 27 inches in 24 hours. Was a snow dragon, which you put in a parking lot. You put it over a catch basin. You put your snow in there, and it melts. Everything goes away. There's no trucking, none of that kind of stuff. How that affects your stormwater that you're putting in is what I'm waiting to hear, because it works real good on the surface. They were using them the other day, but what it puts in the storm drains is what you got to be concerned with. Boston got hammered. There were videos of cars coming out of dump truck beds because the operators were just loading everything they had. But the EP was standing there, and every time that happened, they got fined. Listening to some other towns, but I'm going to give some credit to Brett. Him working with MDOT on projects that they're coming up with, you sort of step back and watch them spend their money before you jump on board with a project. And he's very good at talking with Matt, with MDOT, and looking further down the road. So looking further down the road, we're doing that, but we're doing it in sort of a cautious way. So if that helps any.
Oh, it's great. Thank you.
I'm going to use this pause as an opportunity to just kind of make sure these dates are on our calendars. So on Monday, the 23rd at 5, we will have our Finance Committee meeting. So I'll be more big picture, thinking about that structure. I think that's great. And then on March 24th, so Tuesday, we'll have half Winslow Park workshop, and then we'll have Nate and Earl, we discussed. And then on the 7th, we'll do the rest of our department heads.
Nate and Earl will be at the workshop anyway.
Yes, so we're going to try and align that. So mark your calendars.
Helpful?
And I just want to say, Earl, I am deeply appreciative of you sitting here for this entire meeting for this to be the outcome.
No other place I'd rather be.
Oh, I'm sure.
You're in the minority.
So with that,
Make a motion to adjourn?
yes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
So now that we've adjourned, I didn't want to talk